Mere exposure familiarity. You've probably noticed that song you hated at first eventually became your favorite, or that person from class who seemed forgettable until they kept showing up to your coffee spot and suddenly you couldn't look away. That shift isn't random. It's something your brain does without asking permission. Psychologists call it the mere exposure effect. The more you see something, the more your brain likes it. Not because it got better, not because you reasoned your way into loving it, just because it's familiar now. Your nervous system relaxes around familiar things. They feel safer, warmer, less risky. So when someone is consistently in your orbit, same gym, same friend group, same coffee order time, you start associating them with comfort instead of threat. The tricky part is that attraction doesn't feel like it's coming from familiarity. It feels like discovery, like chemistry, like you suddenly realized they were special. But often what you're really responding to is the absence of friction, the ease of prediction, the way your brain stops working so hard around them. This is why proximity matters way more than most people admit. Geographic closeness, repeated interactions, consistent presence, these are the invisible engines of connection. You can't engineer this one through sheer wit or objective attractiveness alone. You have to show up repeatedly in ways that feel natural and low pressure so their brain stops seeing you as a novel and starts seeing you as part of the scenery. The real power lives in that quiet consistency, not in grand gestures or perfect timing, but in becoming someone's comfortable default. Proximity breeds preference. You walk into a coffee shop and sit in the same corner every Tuesday. The barista learns your name. By week 4, you think she's kind. By week 8, you're wondering if she smiles that way at everyone else. You've never exchanged more than pleasantries, but proximity, mere repeated exposure, has begun rewiring how you feel about her. This is not love. It's not even connection. It's your brain's shortcut. Things we see often feel safer, more familiar, more likable. We trust what we've seen before. The mechanism is brutal in its simplicity. Familiarity doesn't need a reason to trigger preference. You could dislike someone's laugh, their politics, their whole vibe. But if you sit near them long enough, something softens. The friction doesn't vanish. It just becomes easier to ignore because your brain has already decided this person belongs in your orbit. Every glance, every hallway nod, every good morning cements the pattern. You are not evaluating them freshly each time. You're recognizing them, and recognition feels like comfort. This is why proximity matters more than most people admit. Your neighbor, your coworker, the person in your class you see 3 times a week, they have an unfair advantage, not because they are exceptional, but because they are there. Repeated exposure is its own form of persuasion, and it works whether you're paying attention or not. The scary part isn't that you might fall for someone undeserving. It's that you might build entire relationships on nothing more than architectural accident. The accident of being nearby when your brain was looking for something familiar to trust. Geography becomes destiny in the smallest ways. Facial symmetry preference. Walk into a room and your eyes land on a face where both sides mirror each other perfectly. And there's a pull almost before you notice it happening. Your brain isn't judging aesthetics the way you think. It's running a rapid health assessment. Symmetry signals genetic stability, developmental soundness, and fewer mutations. So when a face balances left to right, your nervous system reads good genes and attraction floods in before conscious thought arrives. The strange part is how universal this goes. Infants too young to have absorbed any beauty standards show preference for symmetrical faces. Separate cultures across continents and centuries land on symmetry as a high-ranking attraction signal. You're standing at the end of a 10,000-year chain of ancestors who noticed and chose symmetrical partners because their offspring survived at higher rates. That pull you feel toward balance isn't arbitrary, it's ancestral. Yet asymmetry absolutely matters. And here's what flips everything: context, character, laughter, confidence, scent, shared history, vulnerability. These collapse the simple algorithm your brain started with. A slightly crooked smile becomes the thing you miss when they're gone. A distinctive jawline becomes the face you recognize in a crowd. People fall in love with asymmetrical faces constantly because attraction isn't a single checklist your brain runs once and files. It's a living, rewriting system. Notice the difference between that initial spark, the fast, automatic pull towards symmetry, and everything that builds after. One is hardwired, the other is discovery. Most of us blur them together, then feel confused when attraction doesn't behave like a simple rule. Averageness attraction bias. You walk into a room and your eye lands on someone whose face is almost unremarkable. Nothing too sharp, nothing too soft, nothing that makes you do a double take. Then you can't stop looking. It feels like comfort wrapped in a human form, and your brain is absolutely doing the math on why. This is the averageness paradox. Faces closest to the statistical middle of a population, blended, symmetrical, free of extreme features, trigger a deep pull toward attraction. Your brain reads average, not as boring, but as trustworthy, healthy, and genetically stable. Evolution built you this way. When features cluster toward the middle, it usually meant less mutation, fewer hidden illnesses, and better odds for survival. A face that is too unusual, too asymmetrical, or too far from the norm registers as a small danger signal, even if you consciously find it beautiful. The sticky part is that this bias works so quietly, you think you are discovering genuine attraction when you are mostly reading a population-level average your brain learned early. Models, actors, and AI-generated faces often score highest in attractiveness studies, not because they are perfect, but because they are impossibly average, every feature hitting the exact mathematical center. It feels like desire, but it is really recognition. That pull toward the familiar, the centered, the safe. So the next time you fall for someone's face, pause and get curious. Are you drawn to them as a distinct individual, or are you drawn to how seamlessly they resemble everyone around you? Halo effect from beauty. You're sitting across from someone attractive and they say something moderately clever. You laugh. Actually laugh, even though your coworker said almost the same thing yesterday and you barely noticed. Your brain isn't lying to you. It's just running on a shortcut that's older than language itself. That person's face is doing something to how you interpret everything else about them, and you won't even see it happening. This is the halo effect, but specifically weaponized by beauty. One trait we find appealing, in this case physical attractiveness, bleeds into how we judge intelligence, kindness, trustworthiness, even humor. It's not shallow, it's how perception works. An attractive person's ambition reads as admirable. The same ambition in someone less conventionally attractive might read as pushy. They told the same joke. Your brain just decided one version was funnier because it came with better lighting. What makes this sticky is that it doesn't stop at first impressions. Beauty's halo persists even after you know better. Attractive people get hired more often, receive lighter sentences in court, and are assumed to be more competent at jobs that have nothing to do with appearance. And here's the trap: because we like them more, they often become more confident, which makes them actually better at things like negotiating or public speaking. The halo doesn't just change how we see them, it changes who they become. Next time someone beautiful pitches you an idea or asks for something, pause and ask yourself, would I trust this if they looked different? That small friction might just cut through the spell. Baby face overgeneralization. You see someone with round cheeks, big eyes, soft features, and something in your brain just decides they're trustworthy, harmless, kind, maybe even a little incompetent, which makes you want to protect them. That's not a personal choice. That's your nervous system running ancient software. Infants carry those exact features, and for millions of years, we needed to care for them without skepticism. So evolution wired this into you. Soft features equal safety equals someone you can lower your guard around. The trap is brutal in its simplicity. Face shape says almost nothing about character, but your gut treats it like gospel truth. A person with a baby face can be calculating, cruel, or manipulative, and you'll believe their excuses longer than you would from someone with angular features and intensity. Conversely, someone with a sharp jawline or piercing eyes gets read as competent, capable, maybe dangerous, or cold, even if they're gentler than the round-faced one beside them. This overgeneralization runs through every consequential moment. Hiring decisions, dating swipes, whether you trust a salesperson, even jury verdicts and promotions. We're not being rational, we're being ancestral. The person hiring usually doesn't realize they just picked the rounder-faced candidate. The person swiping left doesn't think, I'm discriminating based on juvenile markers, but it's happening in the milliseconds before consciousness even registers. Next time you meet someone new, notice which features your gut reacts to before they even speak. Notice what your nervous system decides in that first silent second. You might surprise yourself with what you've been believing all along and what you'll notice once you can't unsee it. Grooming as effort signal. You notice someone has freshly ironed their shirt, not just clean, pressed. That detail lands differently than a wrinkled one, and your brain knows exactly why. Pressed cloth costs time, and time is the one thing nobody can fake having more of. When someone shows up to meet you with grooming that required genuine effort, a fresh haircut, visible care, clothes that fit and coordinate, they are not being vain. They are saying, without words, that you were worth the morning ritual, and that matters to your nervous system more than any compliment ever could. Grooming sits at a weird intersection. It is personal enough to feel like self-respect and specific enough to feel like it was done for you. A person who is sloppy about their own appearance is essentially saying they have not allocated mental resources toward the interaction. A person who has clearly invested is sending the opposite signal that they did. And here is where it gets interesting. Effort visibility works both ways. When you show up groomed, you are not just appealing to the other person. You are signaling to yourself that this matters. Your own brain shifts into a different mode when you have made that small investment. You take yourself more seriously. You sit differently, you listen differently. The grooming becomes a contract with yourself before it becomes one with them. So if attraction has been flat, start here, not with manipulation, but with a simple question. What would it look like to treat this moment like it was worth my time? Red color arousal transfer. Walk into any room where someone is wearing red and watch what happens. Not to them, but to the people around them. Their pupils dilate. Their attention snaps tighter. Their nervous system wakes up before they even know why. Your brain doesn't process red as a neutral color choice. It processes red as a signal that something important is happening, something that demands arousal. This isn't cultural conditioning alone. Primates show the same nervous system shift when they see red on potential mates. Your body reacts before your conscious mind gets a vote. Here's the trap that catches most people. That arousal your nervous system just generated doesn't come with a label. Your heart beats faster, and then your brain scrambles to explain it. Whatever is closest, their confidence, their smile, the way they stand, gets the credit. You attribute the arousal the color created directly to the person themselves. Red doesn't actually make someone more attractive. It makes you more available to attraction. Your sensors are already warm before they open their mouth. This is why the same person feels electric in one outfit and invisible in another. Add red to the equation, and you've shifted their entire arousal state before a single word lands. Remove it, and the whole nervous system settles. It's not magic, it's physiology. The real move is understanding that when you're trying to make an impression, whether you're selling something, asking something, or just trying to matter to someone, you're not just managing what you say or do. You're managing their arousal state first. Get their body ready, and their mind will write whatever story makes sense to it. Vocal pitch signaling. Your voice shifts the moment someone you want to impress walks into the room, and you're almost never aware it's happening. A woman's pitch lifts higher, airier, softer. A man's settles deeper, more resonant. No conscious decision involved. Your vocal cords are broadcasting raw signals about health, dominance, fertility, and confidence before your brain even registers the choice. Listeners catch these cues instantly, below the waterline of awareness, which is why a deeper male voice often lands as authoritative, or why a higher female voice reads as youthful and vital. But pitch isn't a fixed script. Context rewrites it. Drop too far and you sound defeated or guarded. Push too high and nervous energy leaks through. The real magnetism lives in the micro moments. A slight vocal dip when you speak someone's name, a breath of silence before something true, a quieter turn that makes them lean in to hear you better. These tiny shifts feel intimate because they signal vulnerability, like you're sharing something private just with them. Your listener's brain registers that vocal shift as arousal, and their attraction system mirrors it back, a quiet neural echo. The snare comes when you try to manufacture it, when you force depth or softness that doesn't belong to you. Instead, pay attention to when you naturally settle, voice dropping slightly, rhythm unhurried, pauses that feel genuine instead of panicked. That version, the unperformed one, is almost always what actually lands. Attraction isn't built on technique. It responds to the small, honest signs of someone genuinely present. Postural expansiveness perception. You walk into a room and immediately spot someone who feels magnetic, not because of their face, but because they're taking up space, chest open, shoulders back, arms loose at their sides or gesturing freely. Your brain doesn't consciously register this, but it registers something, and that something whispers confidence, power, comfort in their own skin. Postural expansiveness is the physical vocabulary of someone who believes they belong, and attraction follows that belief like a shadow. Here's what's happening under the surface. When someone occupies their body fully, they signal to your nervous system that they have nothing to hide and nothing to prove. You feel safer around them, not weaker, but steadier. Compare this to the person hunched inward, arms crossed, taking up minimal space. Your brain reads that as uncertainty, guardedness, maybe even shame. Same person, completely different gravitational pull. The trick is, this doesn't require perfection. You don't need a gym membership or a particular body type. You need permission. permission to stop apologizing for existing. When you sit at a table, don't collapse into yourself. When you stand, let your shoulders fall back naturally instead of pulling them up toward your ears. Uncross your arms. Take a breath deep enough that your chest actually expands. People feel the difference immediately, even if they can't name it. That expansiveness reads as self-respect, and self-respect is catnip for attraction. It's not arrogance. Arrogance shrinks you because it's defensive. Real expansiveness is just you, fully present in the space you're already allowed to occupy, and that's where the real pull lives. Height and dominance heuristic. Your eye lands on them before you even decide to look. Tall. There's something about height that just pulls attention like gravity, and you probably didn't choose to notice it that way. It just happened. Blame your ancestors' brain. For thousands of years, taller meant stronger, and stronger meant more likely to keep you alive when things got dangerous. A person who could see over the tall grass, reach the high food, and physically dominate a threat was genuinely useful to have around. Your attraction system still runs that old code, even though you now live in climate-controlled buildings and settle conflicts with emails. So when height enters the room, it triggers a dominance signal, which fires a whole cascade underneath: confidence, capability, status, safety, the whole package. And here's the sneaky part. This happens before you're even aware it's happening. You might meet someone shorter and feel absolutely nothing, then spend 3 weeks with them and discover they're hilarious and brilliant, and suddenly height becomes almost irrelevant. That initial attraction, pure heuristic. Your brain grabbed one visible piece of data and built an entire narrative on top of it without consulting you. But understanding this doesn't make you shallow. It makes you human. Your brain is predictable because it uses shortcuts. It takes the fastest available signal and runs with it. The real move isn't fighting your wiring or feeling guilty about it. It's noticing when a shortcut is driving the bus and then consciously deciding whether to let it stay there or take the wheel yourself. That's where genuine preference actually gets built. Waist to hip ratio cue. Your brain reads a silhouette in less than a second, and buried in that flash is a calculation your conscious mind will never see. The ratio between waist and hip width isn't something you learned in school. It's wired into your nervous system from thousands of years of scanning for health and fertility cues in a single glance. A narrower waist relative to hip width signals youth, reproductive fitness, and hormonal balance, which lands in the brain as magnetic across cultures and centuries, even when you can't put words to it. This isn't shallow, it's older than thought itself. Your body is trying to transmit something about survival and genetics to your conscious mind before you've even formed a sentence. Here's the trap. This cue operates entirely underground, which means attraction often ignites first and your reasoning catches up after. You find yourself drawn to someone before you can explain it, or you spin a story about their charm or their laugh when the real match lit the moment they appeared. The trick is not confusing the signal for the person sending it. A body shape is data, not destiny. People aren't attracted to ratios, they're attracted to people. But when you understand that your initial spark usually ignites around these ancient geometric patterns, you can separate the automatic response from the actual choice you're making. Next time attraction flares fast, pause and ask, am I responding to a real human being here, or to a shape my ancestors would have found safe to partner with? That distinction changes everything about what happens next. Shoulder to hip ratio cue. Your eyes move through a room faster than your conscious mind can track, and one of the first things they're measuring is the distance from someone's shoulders to their hips. Not because you're shallow, your brain is reading an ancient signal that bypassed language millions of years ago. A wider shoulder-to-hip ratio relative to a narrower midsection tells your nervous system something about health, symmetry, and resilience before you've even formed a thought. Men with broader shoulders and narrower hips, women with wider hips relative to their waist, register as having better body geometry in a deeply biological way, shorthand for hormonal balance, ability to survive hardship, and genetic fitness. But here's the thing. This signal is absurdly easy to manipulate with the right jacket, the right posture, the right way of moving through space. A tailored cut creates shoulder width. Standing tall instead of slouching changes the ratio instantly. Whether someone carries tension in their frame or moves with ease completely reshapes how that geometry reads to anyone watching. The real trap is that it works beneath awareness on both sides. The person reading the cue has no idea they're doing it, and the person sending it often doesn't realize which signals they're broadcasting. So, pay attention. Notice when someone's posture, clothing, or how they carry themselves shifts their presence in a room. And if you're the one being observed, know that a few inches of shoulder broadness or a small shift in how you stand can change how your ratio lands without you ever saying a word. That's the whole game right there. Scent and immune compatibility. Your nose is running a genetic screening test right now, and you don't even know it. When you catch someone's scent, that warm skin smell, cologne mixed with sweat, the particular musk of their neck, your olfactory system is sampling their immune profile. It sounds like pseudoscience until you realize that humans have been doing this for thousands of years, before dating apps, before language, before conscious choice even existed. We are wired to detect something real, major histocompatibility complex, or MHC, a suite of genes that determines how your immune system fights disease, and attraction hinges on it. The stranger thing, you're most drawn to people whose immune genetics are different from yours. Why? Because when two immune systems clash genetically, their offspring get the benefits of both defenses. Disease can't lay siege to one family fortress when you've got two entirely different lock and key systems. So when you feel that inexplicable pull towards someone, a magnetic, can't explain it draw, your body is doing math. Your nose is asking, is this person's immunity different enough to make our kids harder to kill? It happens below language, below logic, below the stories you tell yourself about why they're hot. This is why people who seem perfect on paper sometimes leave you cold. No genetic conversation happened, and why someone might smell like home the moment you meet them. Your immune system recognizes a strong partnership when it senses one. The next time chemistry sparks, pause and notice whether it started with a story in your head or a signal from your skin. Your body often knows something true long before your mind has words for it. Scent memory encoding. Walk into a room and catch a whiff of someone's cologne or perfume, and suddenly you're 10 years old again, standing in your grandmother's kitchen. That is not nostalgia playing tricks. That is your olfactory system hijacking your memory in ways that sight and sound simply cannot match. Your nose connects directly to the limbic system, the emotional center of your brain, with almost no filter. Every other sense has to pass through the thalamus first, the brain's relay station. Scent skips the line entirely. This is why a fragrance can flood you with feeling before you even consciously register what you are smelling. When attraction enters the picture, this direct pathway becomes lethal. The scent someone wears or their natural body chemistry gets encoded as part of your memory of them. It becomes almost inseparable from who they are in your mind. You smell that scent months later on a stranger, and your nervous system responds as if that person is suddenly present. That is level 15 power. You are no longer just attracting through words or presence. You are encoding yourself into someone's involuntary recall system. The practical side is this. If you are building real attraction, pay attention to scent consistency. Not necessarily expensive perfume, but your smell, clean skin, the soap you use, even how your clothes smell after you have worn them. These are the details that lodge in someone's memory without them realizing it is happening. You become the person they smell in their dreams, the one their body recognizes before their mind catches up. Scent is the shortest path to the deepest part of someone's brain. Pupil dilation contagion. You felt it, that sudden shift in a conversation where the other person just lights up and suddenly you feel more real, more seen, more interesting than you did 30 seconds before. What you're picking up on is partly happening in a channel you can't consciously see. Your pupils dilate when you're interested, attracted, or genuinely engaged. And here's what slips past most people. Other people's brains register that tiny change faster than their conscious mind does. When someone looks at you with dilated pupils, your nervous system reads it as you matter. You're worth attention, and your own pupils tend to dilate in return, a kind of emotional feedback loop unfolding without any words between you. This is pupil dilation contagion, and it's one of the oldest attraction tells in the human body. The pupils are incredibly hard to fake because they respond to genuine interest and arousal, which is why poker players wear sunglasses and why dilated pupils read as attraction across almost every culture. What makes real attraction magnetic is the bidirectional part. The more genuinely curious and engaged you are with someone, the more your pupils open up naturally and they feel that openness as an invitation to open up too. The trap is confusing the signal for the thing itself. Dilated pupils mean attention, not devotion. They're just the first note of interest. Some people have learned to manufacture that wide-eyed charm as pure performance, all theater and no genuine engagement. The move that actually works is bringing real curiosity to conversations so your pupils dilate authentically because when it's real, they feel it, and that contagion becomes genuinely magnetic. Eye contact, duration threshold. You're in a coffee shop and someone across the room looks at you for what feels like forever. 2 seconds pass. 3, your nervous system wakes up. That stranger didn't just glance, they held it. Now your brain is already writing a story about why. Most people think attraction lives in the eyes themselves, but the real magic lives in time. There's a 3-second window where eye contact flips from polite acknowledgement into something that registers as intent. Under 3 seconds, and the brain dismisses it, just checking who's here. Longer than 3, and suddenly your amygdala is flagging this as significant. The person is choosing to stay present with you. They're not looking through you or past you. That duration, that refusal to look away, is a signal that reads like curiosity or confidence or both. And here's what makes it brutal. This threshold is largely unconscious on both sides. You're not timing it consciously, but your body is. Someone who holds your gaze for 5, 6, 7 seconds is triggering a cascade of neurochemical responses that mimics early stage attraction. It's not because they're necessarily attracted to you. It could be dominance, challenge, or genuine interest. The brain just knows that sustained eye contact means something. When you're building attraction with someone, this is one of the easiest levers to understand and use without being creepy about it. Stop the reflexive look away. Count to 4 instead of breaking contact at 2. You'll feel the electricity shift. Most people are so uncomfortable with stillness that they abandon it too fast. Hold steady and watch what happens to the other person's breathing. Triangular gaze pattern. Watch someone's eyes when interest shifts from friend to maybe more, and you'll catch the moment the gaze path rewires itself. In normal conversation, eyes bounce evenly between both of theirs, bilateral, steady, safe. But when attraction starts humming underneath, something shifts. Left eye, right eye, then down to the mouth, then back up. Left eye, right eye, mouth. Repeat. It's a triangle and it's entirely unconscious, yet your brain reads it as a signal reserved for intimate consideration. The kind of visual attention you give someone you're imagining closer than they actually are. The mouth is the pivot point. When someone's eyes land there, they've moved from processing your words to imagining texture, proximity, possibility. Here's what makes this sneaky and powerful. You genuinely cannot fake this pattern convincingly, and people sense the difference in their bones before they think it. But you don't need to fake it. You build it by actually noticing the fine lines around their eyes when they laugh, the exact shape their mouth makes mid-sentence, the small architecture of their face that pulls your attention deeper into them. When you notice real things instead of executing a technique, the gaze shift feels like something that happened to you, not something you deployed, and that authenticity lands like gravity. Your eyes become a script about who this person is becoming in your mind, and they read it live. The people who do this without calculation, without ever learning the name of the pattern, those are the ones that stick in everyone's thoughts long after the conversation ends. It's not strategy dressed up as accident. It's attention made visible, and it's one of the oldest invitations we have. Smile authenticity detection. Walk into a room and someone smiles at you, teeth gleaming, timing perfect, yet something in your chest stays closed. You don't believe them. What you're actually sensing is the gap between a social smile and a real one, and your brain has already run a forensic analysis you never authorized. A genuine smile, the kind born from actual warmth toward you, lights up the orbicularis oculi, those tiny muscles around the eyes that crinkle outward when joy is real. When someone's faking it, those muscles stay dormant. You can choreograph your mouth all day long, but forcing those eye crinkles, nearly impossible. The asymmetry broadcasts like a neon sign, and your nervous system reads it like a polygraph test, running the calculation below your awareness. People feel this difference instantly without naming it. Authenticity has a pull that cosmetic precision simply cannot manufacture. When someone's whole face participates in their smile, eyes crinkling, cheeks lifting, forehead softening, you feel genuinely seen. Their eyes are confessing what their mouth alone would never dare. Here's where most people miss the move. We try to maximize our smile's performance, crank up the wattage, when the real magnetism comes from becoming someone worth smiling genuinely about. The attraction lives not in the teeth or the arc of the curve, but in the permission you give your face to respond truthfully to someone's presence. Stop rehearsing your expression next time you meet someone that matters. Instead, find something authentic to notice about them, something real, something that genuinely lands. Your face will translate that into the only smile that actually works. Laughter as coalition signal. Watch what happens next time you laugh at something actually funny with someone you barely know. Your nervous system syncs with theirs for a moment, and suddenly you're on the same team. That's not accidental. Laughter is one of the oldest alliance-building tools humans have, older than language itself. And when you laugh at the same joke, you're broadcasting that you see the world the way they do. Your sense of humor is a coalition flag. You're saying, I'm safe to be around. We're the same type of animal. The people who laugh at our jokes feel like tribe. That's why comedians have always had charisma. They find what people secretly think and name it. And everyone who laughs together becomes bonded instantly. In attraction, this matters because shared laughter creates the illusion of intimacy without the risk. You can be vulnerable through humor in a way that feels playful instead of exposed. Someone who makes you laugh is someone your brain decides has read you correctly, has understood something true about you. And someone who laughs at your jokes, you feel seen by them. That's magnetic. The trap is thinking laughter has to be forced or clever. It doesn't. The strongest coalition signal is when both of you find something genuinely ridiculous and you laugh together without performing. No audience, no trying. Just, we find the same stuff funny, which means we're wired similarly enough to build something real. The next time you're interested in someone, notice whether they laugh at the small, stupid things you notice. If they do, you've already begun the coalition. Teasing and benign violation. You're sitting across from someone you like and they mock you for something small. Your coffee order, the way you laugh, a dumb joke you just made. Your stomach drops for half a second. Then you realize they're smiling. You smile back. Suddenly you're both laughing and something shifted. That gap between threat and safety, between wait, are they mean? And oh, they're playing with me. That's where attraction lives. Psychologists call it benign violation. A rule gets broken in a way that doesn't actually hurt. It's playful and slightly risky at the same time, which is exactly what your nervous system reads as exciting. Teasing works because it says three things at once. First, I notice you enough to call you out. Second, I trust you won't fall apart if I do. Third, I'm confident enough not to need you to be perfect. The person who never pushes back, never jokes at your expense, never breaks the fourth wall. They feel safe, sure, but not magnetic. The teasing person feels like they see you, not performing niceness, but being real. The best teasing comes from affection. You can only tease about things that prove you've been paying attention. It lands as evidence of intimacy, not insult. Stop trying so hard to make them feel good. Instead, occasionally do something that risks making them feel slightly unsettled in a way they'll laugh about once they get it. That moment of, wait, did they just, followed by relief and amusement, that's when real attraction wakes up. Pratfall effect charm. You've probably noticed how the most likable person in the room isn't the one with the flawless resume. It's often the one who trips slightly while telling a story, laughs at themselves, and keeps going. That stumble does something almost magnetic to how people see you. The pratfall effect reveals why vulnerability, when handled right, makes you more attractive, not less. Your imperfections are not a bug you need to hide. They're a signal that you're real enough to admit you're human. When someone who otherwise seems competent, polished, intelligent, assured, reveals a genuine crack in the armor, other people relax around them. It feels like permission. It feels like safety. You're not a threat. You're not performing. You're just here, flawed and trying, same as everyone else. The trap, though, is that this only works if you're genuinely competent first. An incompetent person admitting they're flawed just reads as incompetent, and people sense that immediately. But a capable person who laughs at their mistakes, who says, I have no idea what I'm doing when it's true, who doesn't take themselves too seriously, that person becomes magnetic in ways that polish never could. Your audience doesn't want perfection. They want permission to be imperfect around you. They want proof that messing up doesn't disqualify you from belonging or mattering. The next time you catch yourself mid-stumble, don't spin it or cover it up fast. Acknowledge it. Move forward. Watch what happens to the room around you. Notice how people lean in closer instead of away, and how your honesty becomes the thing they actually trust. Mimicry chameleon effect. You've probably noticed this without naming it. Sit across from someone you're nervous around and your shoulders tighten. Sit with someone relaxed and suddenly you're leaning back too. Your nervous system doesn't decide this consciously, it just mirrors. This is the chameleon effect, and it runs so deep that people feel more drawn to those who move like them, talk like them, even breathe like them. A therapist might cross their legs exactly when you do. A person you're attracted to might unconsciously match your speech rhythm. The backward pull is just as strong. When someone mimics you, you like them more. You feel seen, understood, safe. Your brain interprets similarity as belonging, and belonging triggers attraction. This is why skilled conversationalists, salespeople, therapists, people genuinely good at connection are often natural mimics. They're not faking it, though some certainly are. They're just picking up on the frequency of the person in front of them. The trap most people fall into is trying too hard, overdoing it, which reads as inauthentic and creepy. Subtle is the whole game here. Match the pace of their speech, not word for word, but the rhythm. Mirror their openness. If they're guarded, don't flood them with vulnerability. If they're animated, meet that energy. The chameleon effect works because it's honest adaptation, not performance. You're not becoming someone else. You're tuning into their wavelength. The person across from you feels that attunement and responds with trust before they even know why. That's the invisible current where real attraction lives, not in technique, but in the felt sense of being truly met. Vocal convergence accommodation. You walk into a meeting and someone you find attractive starts speaking. 2 minutes in, you realize you've shifted your pace, your pitch, maybe even your accent, mirroring them without thinking. That's vocal convergence, and it happens because attraction literally rewires how you communicate. When you like someone, your brain treats their voice as a template and starts pulling your own toward it, the same way a tuning fork vibrates when it hears its frequency. The wild part is that they often feel this without knowing why. That subtle echo signals something your words haven't said yet. I see you. I'm moving toward you. It's primal bonding chemistry dressed up in speech patterns. But here's where it gets magnetic in attraction specifically. This mirroring creates a flywheel. When they unconsciously notice you've converged toward them, they often converge back, and suddenly you're in this private linguistic dance that no one else in the room is doing. You're literally speaking the same language in a way that feels intimate and locked in. The trap is thinking this needs to be deliberate. It doesn't. Forcing it kills the magic instantly. The real game is noticing when it's already happening naturally, then trusting it without editing. If you find yourself automatically softening your tone or slowing your speech around someone, that's not weakness. That's your nervous system saying yes before your brain catches up. That vocal flexibility is a green light. Pay attention to who brings it out in you. Usually, they matter far more than you've admitted to yourself. Interactional synchrony rapport. You've probably noticed that some people feel easy to be around while others drain you within minutes, and it has almost nothing to do with what they're saying. Watch two people who actually click. Really watch them. Their breathing sinks. One leans in, the other leans in. Someone touches their face, and 5 seconds later, the other does too. They're not doing this on purpose. It's automatic mirroring, and your nervous system reads it as safety. When someone moves with you instead of against you, your brain interprets that as alignment, agreement, belonging. This is interactional synchrony, the invisible dance that either builds rapport or kills it before a word lands right. The wild part is that you can feel when it's broken. A therapist who sits perfectly still while you pour your guts out, a date who checks their phone while you're talking, a friend who speeds up their words while you're slowing down yours. Your body notices the mismatch even if your conscious mind doesn't have words for it. Synchrony itself isn't manipulation when it flows from genuine presence, but your nervous system trusts movement more than it trusts words. Someone can say they care while their body says something else entirely. The real pull happens when you stop performing and start moving together. If you want to build actual connection with someone, start by matching their tempo, not their words, but their rhythm and pace. Slow if they slow, pause if they pause, breathe where they breathe. Let your presence settle into theirs without announcement or effort. That invisible alignment, the one nobody has to think about, is where real attraction actually begins. Music synchrony entrainment. You're at a concert and something weird happens. Your heartbeat syncs with the bass, your shoulders move in time, and suddenly the person next to you feels less like a stranger and more like a co-conspirator in the same rhythm. That's entrainment at work, and it's one of the quietest forces in attraction you're probably not thinking about. When two people move, breathe, or respond to the same beat, their nervous systems literally calibrate to each other. It's not poetic metaphor, it's neurobiology. Your mirror neurons fire in unison. Your vocal patterns begin to match. That synchrony creates a felt sense of we're in this together, and attraction follows because safety and understanding feel identical to the brain. Slow dancing with someone new, or even just sitting across a table in a noisy restaurant where the ambient music pulls you both into the same tempo, your body is already saying yes before your mind catches up. The power multiplies when it's mutual and unhurried. You don't need a conscious agreement. You just need the same song playing at the right moment. Road trips feel bonding. Dancing builds intimacy faster than talking. A shared playlist becomes weirdly romantic. Even matching someone's breathing pace creates a small pocket of connection. If you're trying to build real closeness and you're only using words, you're leaving the body's entire language off the table. Next time you're with someone you want to feel closer to, notice what music or rhythm is already happening in the air around you, and don't interrupt it. Personal space negotiation. There is a moment in every conversation where someone leans in and you decide whether to lean back or step away. That micro dance is not rude. It is the oldest negotiation happening right now, and your body knows the script better than your brain does. When someone respects your invisible bubble, attraction blooms because safety came first. When they breach it slowly and you let them, something shifts in how you see them. Suddenly, they are not a stranger anymore. They are someone who belongs a little closer. Most people do this unconsciously. They feel the shift but cannot name it. You lean in at a coffee table, they mirror you. You take a step back after a stressful comment, they give you space. These are not accidents. They are signals that say, I am reading you, I am adjusting for you. The magic happens when someone navigates your space without making it weird. They feel like they understand you without you having to say a word. It feels like being known. This is why awkward people often struggle. They either camp in your personal zone or stay frozen too far away, never finding the rhythm. The move that matters is learning to read the thermometer in real time. Watch the shoulders. Watch whether someone is settling in or tensing up. If someone is leaning their weight toward you, they are choosing you. If they are keeping one foot pointed toward the exit, they are keeping options open. Start noticing this in your next conversation, not to manipulate it, but to hear what it is actually saying. The closer someone is willing to stand, the closer they are willing to let you in. Touch escalation hierarchy. Reach back to the first time someone you wanted touched your arm deliberately. You remember it exactly, don't you? Which hand? How long? Which direction? That wasn't random. It was a question your nervous system felt asking. Your nervous system answered back. Every contact carries data, and there's an actual grammar to it, a sequence that moves like chapters in a book. It starts so small, you'd miss it if you weren't paying attention. A brush on the elbow, a hand on the lower back as you both move through a doorway, fingertips grazing yours for a half second across a table. To anyone else in the room, it's nothing. To the person receiving it, it's everything. The architecture works because each touch is a proposal that waits for acceptance before anything heavier arrives. You don't jump from an arm touch to held hands without reading what happened in between. A flinch, a subtle pullback, eyes shifting away, those are the full stop. But a lean inward, a turn toward you, a mirroring of your gesture, that's permission to climb one rung higher. Most people get stuck frozen by their own fear, making no move at all, or rushing the steps and wondering why someone puts distance back between you. The hierarchy exists because it speaks to something real in the body. Boundaries aren't obstacles to crack, they're nervous systems asking for proof you're paying attention. What makes this work isn't the touching itself, it's the reading. You're patient. You're not rushing. You're demonstrating that you can feel what someone else feels, and that attunement, that willingness to stay slow and present, is where attraction actually builds. Ambient noise proximity effect. Lean across a small table in a loud bar, ears nearly touching, and suddenly this person feels magnetic. Nothing they're saying is particularly brilliant, but the noise around you has shrunk your world down to their face. That compression is the trick. When ambient chaos spikes, your nervous system pulls you physically closer to focus, and that involuntary movement wakes something ancient. Vulnerability, shared struggle, a tiny pocket of us against the chaos. Your body reads proximity as connection, and your mind believes it. Researchers studying this phenomenon discovered something darker. The effect doesn't care if you actually like each other. Two strangers forced together during a fire alarm, packed into a subway car, squeezed at a concert, they float away afterward feeling oddly bonded, not because conversation went deep, but because their bodies were close and the world around them vanished. The noise manufactured the intimacy. This is why nightclubs, loud restaurants, parties accelerate attraction so ruthlessly. The environment does the seduction work for you, but here's the catch. Move that same person to a quiet coffee shop a week later, and the feeling often dissolves. The proximity is gone. The manufactured closeness evaporates. That person might feel like a stranger again. Loud venues borrow their intensity from the space itself rather than from actual connection. If you're building something that needs to last, you need both the pull of nearness and the substance of depth, not just the noise doing all the heavy lifting. Quiet is where you find out if anyone's actually there. Alcohol, myopia, narrowing. You're at a bar with someone you like, nursing your second drink. The conversation has been light, safe, until they lean in with a question that would normally make you nervous. But right now, the answer tumbles out. Later you wonder, where did that confidence come from? And why does the sober version of you feel so far away? What's happening is called alcohol myopia, and it's not just about lowered inhibitions. It's about how alcohol literally narrows your mental spotlight. When you drink, your brain's processing power shrinks. You can hold fewer competing thoughts at once, so the anxiety about rejection, the voice reminding you of past embarrassments, the calculation of whether this is a good idea, all those background worries get pushed out of the spotlight. What's left is bigger, brighter, closer, just you and them and this moment. In attraction terms, this is dangerous and useful at once. Dangerous because you might move faster than you actually want to, share things you'll regret, or miss red flags you'd normally catch. Useful because sometimes the barrier between two people isn't real anyway. It's just the noise your sober brain generates. The trap is mistaking the narrowed view for clarity. Alcohol doesn't make you braver. It makes you unable to see the full picture. If you want to build real attraction without the chemical editing, you need to practice that same narrowing skill yourself, ruthlessly focusing on what's actually in front of you while gently quieting the noise that keeps you small. That's the version of you that actually gets to stay, and it's stronger than any drink could ever make you. Similarity, attraction principle. Watch what happens when you walk into a room full of strangers and someone laughs at the exact same joke you do. That feeling isn't random attraction, it's recognition. Your brain spots someone who thinks like you, dresses in your vibe, or questions the same things you question, and it sends a small rush of relief through your nervous system. It's validation that your way of seeing the world isn't weird or wrong. That ease becomes magnetic pull, and you find yourself naturally drawn to them, whether as a friend or something more. The reason is simple. Similarity shrinks the distance between you. You don't have to translate as much. You don't have to explain yourself. Your internal template matches theirs, so your nervous system relaxes. You feel understood without performing. But here's the trap. When you surround yourself only with people who confirm your existing way of thinking, you build a cage that feels like home. The questioner only talks to other questioners. The loyal person only befriends the reliably faithful. Your circle becomes smaller and tighter, and your world stays exactly the same. Similarity feels good, but growth rarely does. The person who thinks exactly like you probably won't push you toward who you're trying to become. So notice the difference between attraction that soothes you and attraction that actually moves you forward. Sometimes the most valuable person in your life is similar enough that you trust them, but different enough that they make you slightly uncomfortable. The one who stretches you without breaking the thread and who makes you better not because they're familiar, but because they're just unfamiliar enough. Attitude, alignment, illusion. You meet someone at a party who laughs at your jokes, nods along with your political rant, and seems to light up when you talk about your passions. Walking home, you feel magnetic, like you found someone who gets you. But here's what actually happened. They mirrored you skillfully, and your brain ran a shortcut called the attitude alignment illusion. When someone agrees with us or reflects our values back, we unconsciously assume deeper compatibility than actually exists. This is especially magnetic in attraction because agreement feels like understanding, and understanding feels like intimacy. The trap is that someone can align with your surface attitudes, your taste in music, your sense of humor, your take on politics, without sharing your character, your values under pressure, or how they treat people when no one's watching. People do this all the time, sometimes intentionally, sometimes because they're also just trying to fit in. Worse, once you feel that initial alignment click, confirmation bias takes over. You start noticing evidence that confirms the connection while filtering out red flags. The quiet sign that the illusion is working. You're doing most of the talking and they're doing most of the reflecting. Real alignment takes time and friction, moments where you disagree and see how someone actually handles it. The attractive move isn't perfect agreement, it's being real enough to reveal where you actually differ, then staying curious anyway. The people worth keeping around are the ones who can sit with that discomfort. That's when you know what you're looking at is actual connection, not just a well-timed reflection in a mirror. Matching hypothesis equilibrium. Walk into any coffee shop and look at the couples. You won't see fairy tales, you'll see mirrors. The person you're actually attracted to isn't usually the most conventionally beautiful one in the room. They're the one who feels like they could plausibly say yes. Your brain is doing something ruthlessly quiet. Who could I realistically get, and who would realistically choose me back? That unspoken calculation between what you think you deserve and what you think you can access shapes almost every romantic choice you make. It's called matching hypothesis equilibrium, and it's why partners tend to cluster at similar levels of attractiveness, intelligence, humor, or social standing. Here's what makes it stick. Equilibrium breeds stability that actually lets you breathe. When both people feel roughly equal in value, neither one is secretly terrified the other will wake up and leave. There's no constant performing, no invisible scoreboard of who's got more to lose. You can relax into being genuinely seen instead of perpetually auditioning. The trap shows up when you try to force yourself above that equilibrium line, not through real growth, but through desperation or ego. You'll feel the strain immediately, and they will too. But when you stop fighting your actual league and find someone in that same bandwidth, the whole relationship changes shape. It shifts from acquisition to actual partnership. Next time you're drawn to someone, pause and feel the texture of that pull. Are you positioning yourself as an equal, or are you already rehearsing your case? That sensation almost always predicts whether the spark survives contact with reality. Complementarity in dominance. Watch what happens when someone stops trying to win and actually leans into what the other person is good at. A naturally commanding person paired with someone comfortable following, not because they're weak, but because they're genuinely unbothered by the spotlight, creates this strange magnetic pull. It's not about one person controlling and one submitting. It's about two different comfort zones clicking into place like they were designed to fit that way. You've seen couples like this. One takes charge of the decisions, the other shapes how those decisions feel, and somehow neither one resents the other's role because the roles feel so natural. The real sting comes when people pretend to be something they're not. A naturally dominant person forcing themselves to be passive, or a person who thrives on clarity pretending to be mysterious. The friction shows up immediately in the nervous system. Your body knows. Attraction dies in that gap between who you're pretending to be and what actually makes you tick. The stickiness here is permission. You don't have to be equally assertive or equally reserved to work. You need to actually be what you're doing. If you're someone who naturally takes the lead, find someone who doesn't experience that as a threat, who maybe even finds it restful. If you're someone who prefers to respond rather than initiate, seek someone comfortable holding that space without needing you to fight them for it. The deepest pull isn't to someone stronger or weaker than you. It's to someone who doesn't need you to be smaller or bigger than you actually are. perceived reciprocal liking. Someone smiles at you across a room and your chest tightens, not because their smile is objectively perfect, but because your brain instantly translates it as, "This person likes me." That signal, real or imagined, rewires everything. You lean in. You remember their words. You forgive small slights. You show up differently. This is reciprocal liking, and it is less about what they actually feel and more about what you believe they feel about you. The cruel math is this: you attract people by being attracted to them first, but what truly hooks someone is the belief that you are already hooked on them. It is why a stranger who mirrors your energy, laughs at your jokes, and seems genuinely interested in your thoughts suddenly becomes magnetic. They have not done anything objectively grand. They have just signaled that they see you. That signal travels faster than logic. Your brain reads it as safe to invest, and investment feels like love. This matters because perceived reciprocal liking is highly manipulable. Skilled people know this. They practice attentiveness, remembering details, asking follow-up questions, not because they are necessarily kind, but because these acts broadcast liking, and you, the recipient, feel that broadcast and involuntarily reciprocate. The stickiest part, you cannot fully control this. You can catch yourself mid-attraction and ask if the liking is real or performed, but the feeling arrives before the question does. The next time you feel suddenly drawn to someone, pause and notice what signal made you tilt toward them. Was it something they did or something you decided to believe about what they did? Self-disclosure, reciprocity ladder. There's a dance that happens the moment someone trusts you with something real. They've just handed you a choice. You can pocket it and stay safe, or you can climb one rung higher and hand something back. When you do, something shifts. The other person feels it. They didn't just confess to you, they made you part of their story, and now you're part of theirs too. This is the reciprocity ladder, and it's how strangers become people who matter. Here's how it works in real time. Someone mentions a mistake they made at work, feels a little raw saying it, then waits. If you respond with a surface-level comment, the ladder stops dead. But if you mention a time you stumbled too, something equally honest, equally vulnerable, they relax. They've been matched. The vulnerability feels safe now because it's not one-sided. Then they go deeper, then you go deeper. Rung by rung, the two of you build something that shallow small talk could never touch. The real trap is pacing. Move up too fast and you look performative or needy. They'll sense you're trying to buy closeness rather than earn it. Move too slow and they feel rejected, like their openness wasn't worth your honesty. The sweet spot is matching their depth, not their speed. Let them lead, but follow with equal weight. The rhythm matters more than the height. Do this right, and you're not building attraction through charm or games. You're building it through the rare feeling of being truly known. That's worth far more than any opening line ever could. Fast friends escalation protocol. Most people don't notice the exact moment it happens. When someone admits something real and the air shifts, that crack is where fast friends escalation lives, and it has nothing to do with technique or charm. It's a sequence so elemental we've forgotten how to see it. Vulnerability lands first, not last. The person who speaks something true without armor, not a polished story, but an actual fear or observation they've been holding back, sends one message: this is safe. Defenses drop immediately. Then the rhythm takes over. You match their depth an inch higher, like turning up a song just enough to feel the shift. A story about your week becomes a quiet confession about what keeps you awake. A joke becomes an admission of loneliness. What matters is the escalation feels natural because it's driven by real curiosity, not performance. You ask the follow-up question that proves you listened. You remember details from 3 exchanges back. You build on what they shared instead of using it as a launchpad for your own stories. Here's the hidden trap: believing this is a move you execute. It isn't. It works because genuine attention has become so rare that when 2 people meet someone who actually hears them, both nervous systems relax at once. 2 relaxed nervous systems find everything more meaningful, faster. The next time you click instantly with a stranger, you weren't lucky. You both just skipped the costume and found each other underneath. Vulnerability as competence signal. There's a moment in almost every strong connection where someone admits they don't know something, or messed up, or are genuinely afraid. Watch what happens next. Most people feel closer, not farther away. That's not weakness being rewarded. It's competence being signaled in a way that matters more than any credential. When you're secure enough to say, "I don't know," without shrinking or over-explaining, you're telling someone, "I'm solid enough that gaps in my knowledge don't threaten my foundation. I'm not performing. I can be honest." A person who hides every uncertainty looks fragile because they are. They're defending a brittle self-image that needs constant reinforcement. A person who names what they're unsure about looks strong because they're not spending energy on theater, they're available for the real conversation instead. This flips what attraction actually means. You're not drawn to someone because they're flawless. You're drawn to someone because they're real enough to be flawed and still standing, because they can say hard things without needing you to fix them or make them feel better. That's magnetic. The trap is mistaking this for oversharing or emotional dumping. Vulnerability isn't arriving with your whole wound collection on the first date. It's being willing to show that wounds exist, that you know where they are, and that you're not pretending otherwise. It's the quiet, "This is hard for me," said without collapse. In that small admission lies proof that you're someone who can be trusted with reality, not just the curated version. That's when people start leaning in, and that's when real attraction begins. So watch for the moments you want to hide. Those are your practice ground. Capitalization on good news. There's a moment right after someone tells you something good, a promotion, a win, a breakthrough, when they're watching your face, not for politeness, for proof that you get why it matters. If you miss that window, if you go flat or distracted, or worse, jump to fixing the next problem, you've just told them their joy doesn't land with you. And in attraction, that's a small death. The person who can hold space for someone else's good news, who leans in, asks real questions, celebrates without envy or redirect, becomes magnetic. Here's the thing though, it's not about performance. It's about actually pausing your internal noise long enough to care about their thing as much as they do, at least for those few minutes. Most people can't do it. They're thinking about their own news, their own wins, their own whatever comes next. So when you actually show up for someone's good moment without an agenda, without waiting for your turn to talk, without immediately translating it into "what does this mean for me?" you become unforgettable. It's one of the least performed acts of genuine presence in an age of endless competing narratives, and it builds attraction in a way that's almost invisible at first, but then they notice you're the person who gets it. You're the one who didn't dim their light or make it about you. That sticks harder than you'd think. The next time someone shares something good, resist the urge to be clever or topical or helpful. Just be there. Let them land. Watch what happens next. Gottman bid turning toward. A hawk drifts past the window and your partner calls you over. 3 words, barely a whisper. You could keep scrolling. Most people do. But John Gottman, who spent 4 decades watching couples fall apart and hold together in his lab, noticed something about those 3 words. They are a bid, a small, outstretched hand asking for connection. What you do with it shapes everything. When someone bids, you turn toward them or away. Turning away is the path of least resistance, a half-hearted your eyes still fixed on the screen, the moment dissolving before it begins. Turning toward means you actually go there. You look at the hawk. You respond. You create something tiny and alive between you. Here's what Gottman found. Relationships don't collapse from one catastrophic betrayal. They erode from 10,000 small moments where someone reached and nobody answered. Each unanswered bid leaves a small scar, a whisper that says, "I don't matter to you." Each one met is a deposit in the account of safety. The couples who lasted, who remained tethered even through storms, weren't the ones with constant fireworks. They were the ones bidding constantly and answering almost without thinking. They had woven so many micro-connections into the fabric of daily life that they felt fundamentally seen, even on a Tuesday afternoon, doing absolutely nothing special. So the next time someone shares a small thought, an observation, a worry, pause for just one breath. That reaching hand is not casual to them. Meet it, and you're quietly rebuilding the foundation of what holds 2 people together. Reward association conditioning. Your nervous system doesn't actually fall in love with a person. It falls in love with the feeling that person produces. Think about the last time someone texted you back quickly after you'd been anxious. That relief, that spike of, "Oh, thank God they care." Your brain logged it. This person, safety, certainty, reward. Now, every time you see their name light up your phone, a little hit of dopamine fires before you even read the message. You're not responding to who they are, you're responding to the chemical pattern they've become associated with. This is reward association, and it's why attraction can feel so physical even when nothing physical is happening yet. Someone laughs at your joke in a moment when you needed to feel smart. Boom, they're suddenly more attractive. Someone shows up when you're lonely. Their face becomes a cue for relief, and relief feels like love. The tricky part is this works in reverse too. If someone is around when you feel stressed, rejected, or uncertain, even if they're not the cause, your brain can start linking them to that discomfort. You might avoid them without knowing why, or worse, someone might become addictive if the reward is random or intermittent. Ignore them one day, shower them with attention the next. Your brain chases the unpredictable hit harder than the steady one. So when you're drawn to someone, pause and ask, am I attracted to this person or to the feeling I've learned to expect around them? The answer changes everything about whether this pulls you closer or keeps you stuck. Misattribution of arousal. Your heart is already hammering before they even arrive. Anxiety, exposure, the whole voltage running through you. Then something shifts. A joke lands, you both crack up, and suddenly that pounding feels like attraction instead of fear. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between panic and desire. It only knows arousal. The trembling hands, the shortened breath, the way everything else disappears. Same exact chemistry, whether you're about to give a presentation or lean in for a kiss. So when your body is already revved, anything emotionally charged gets misread as romantic pull. This is why people often feel magnetically drawn after a fight. The adrenaline is still circulating, relabeled as passion. Roller coasters and horror movies work as date moves not because they're enjoyable, but because they pre-soak your body into a state that mimics attraction. The invisible part is that you don't catch yourself doing it. You genuinely feel connected when you're really just interpreting your own physical sensations and weaving a story around them. This matters later because some of those intense connections collapse the moment the external rush stops. The relationship that burned white hot during crisis or constant travel often goes flat when life normalizes and the adrenaline fades to quiet. So catch yourself mid-feeling. Are you drawn to the person themselves or to how electrically alive your body feels when they're near? That line is paper thin, but it's the one that determines if something actually deepens or just glowed brilliantly for a season and burned out. Excitation transfer residue. You just finished a hard workout and someone texts you something flirty. Your heart races, your palms feel warm. You text back in a way you normally wouldn't, bolder, more playful, more you. Here's what's actually happening. Your nervous system hasn't cooled down yet. That adrenaline, that quickened pulse, that heightened sensitivity, it's all still humming beneath your skin. When attraction enters the room while you're in that state, your body doesn't know the difference between excitement from exercise and excitement from them. It just knows excited. This is excitation transfer residue, and it roots itself in pure physiology because your body is built to misread timing. The mechanics are brutally simple. Any strong emotion, fear, anger, exertion, anticipation, leaves a physical afterglow in your body. That residue doesn't vanish the moment the cause does. So if someone reaches out when you're still buzzing from something else, they get credit for emotions they didn't create. You feel more alive around them, more magnetic, more into them, and they feel it radiating back like you've been thinking about them all day. The trap is that you can't tell the difference from the inside. Your nervous system doesn't label the feeling as gym endorphins plus their text. It just feels like attraction. So you move faster, trust more, feel more connected than you would in a calm moment. The person on the other end has no idea they got lucky with your timing. You may not realize you're running on someone else's borrowed electricity. Timing isn't destiny, but it shapes how we interpret chemistry more than most of us want to admit. Suspension bridge misread. Researchers planted a shaky bridge in the middle of a forest and stopped people mid-crossing to ask them questions about an attractive assistant standing nearby. The people who'd just been wobbling across rated that person as significantly more appealing than others who answered the same questions on solid ground. The adrenaline, the racing heart, the uncertainty beneath their feet, all that activation got misfiled as attraction to the human in front of them. Your nervous system doesn't have great file management. It just knows you're lit up. And if someone is present while you're activated, those circuits wire together like they belong. This is why fear dates work. This is why breakup sex feels electric. This is why you might feel drawn to someone who makes you anxious. Not because the anxiety is good, but because intensity reads as connection. Here's where it gets dangerous. You can become addicted to that misfiled signal. The fights that make up, the drama that pulls you back in, the uncertainty that keeps you checking your phone at 2 a.m. Your body is flooding itself with cortisol and adrenaline, and some part of you mistakes that surge for love because love has also made you feel alive. The person isn't actually good for you, the suspension bridge is. When you're honest about someone, do a small experiment. Can you feel calm around them and still want to stay? Can you be bored together and not itch to leave? Or does the whole thing collapse the moment the turbulence stops? That answer tells you almost everything you need to know about whether this is real or just your wiring playing tricks. Shared novel arousal activities. Think back to a time you did something you'd never done before with someone. Maybe you got lost in an unfamiliar city together, tried a class that terrified you both, or hiked a trail that felt just barely over your head. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between danger and newness. Both feel alive, and whoever's next to you when it happens gets magnetized into that feeling. In that moment, your adrenaline spiked, uncertainty flooded in, and a little shared risk made everything feel electric. Your brain wired your partner directly into that aliveness. Psychologists call this arousal transfer, and it explains why couples who skydive together or take improv classes report sudden jumps in attraction that feel impossible to explain. The novelty triggers your sympathetic nervous system into fight or flight mode, and your partner absorbs some of that charge. You're not thinking about their flaws when you're both laughing at how badly you're failing at dance class, or when you're genuinely unsure what comes next. Vulnerability and stimulation together create a glue that dinner and a movie nights, no matter how lovely, rarely touch. The trick isn't finding something inherently extreme. Even moderate novelty, a cooking class in a neighborhood you've never been to, a sport neither of you has tried, rewires attraction because it breaks the predictable script and puts you on the same edge. Both of you feel a little exposed, a little alive, a little in it together. If you want to deepen someone's pull towards you, stop offering only comfort. Offer aliveness instead. Self-expansion, motivation. You meet someone and suddenly you feel like you have more room to move around inside your own life. Not because they're solving a problem, but because they're opening a door you didn't know was there. That magnetic pull isn't really about them. It's about who you become around them. Your brain is wired to be drawn to people who expand your sense of what's possible. Maybe they know things you don't. Maybe they move through the world with ease you want to understand. Maybe they pull you toward experiences you wouldn't have chosen alone. When you're around them, you feel like a bigger version of yourself, more capable, more curious, less locked into your own patterns. Here's what makes this sticky. It doesn't require them to be better than you. A person who loves mountain climbing isn't superior to someone who's only ever hiked hills, but they represent untapped territory. And your brain, always hungry for novelty and growth, lights up at that prospect. You start imagining yourself doing these things, thinking these thoughts, becoming this version of you that only exists in their orbit. The real trap is mistaking that expansion for genuine love. You can be wildly attracted to someone's potential to change you and still be with someone fundamentally incompatible with your actual life. The feeling of becoming bigger is intoxicating, but it can also be an escape from yourself, a borrowed identity you're trying on for size. Watch whether the expansion feels like growth that fits who you actually are or just a shiny escape hatch. Real attraction holds both. They make you bigger and you actually like the person you're genuinely becoming, not just the version that exists in their orbit. Novelty and dishabituation. Remember when your partner's text used to make your stomach flip and now it's just noise between other tasks? That drop isn't love dying, it's habituation, your nervous system's way of stopping you from freaking out about the same stimulus over and over. Your brain literally stops registering what's familiar, which is efficient, until it isn't. The person you adore becomes the furniture in your home, always there, barely seen. This is why long-term couples report that attraction can feel like it's faded when really what's faded is novelty. The antidote isn't a new person, it's a new angle on the person you have. Novelty wakes your nervous system back up. It doesn't have to be grand. A conversation in a new room, a place you've never been together, her hair different, his voice in a context where you haven't heard it before. These create tiny jolts of unfamiliarity that signal to your brain, pay attention, this is different. That heightened attention is the actual mechanics of what attraction is. The psychologist's term is dishabituation, the reversal of habituation, that moment when your partner surprises you again. It doesn't make them new, it makes you present again, awake to them. So if you're feeling the fade, the move isn't to swipe left on the relationship, it's to introduce one small variable you haven't tried. Novel context, different time of day, a question you've never asked, a small risk you haven't taken together. These are tiny hacks, but they work because they're fighting against the oldest trap in intimacy, becoming invisible to each other through sheer familiarity. Peak end memory of dates. You know that date where everything was pleasant enough until the last 30 minutes, when you both ended up talking deeper than planned and neither of you wanted to leave, and now you can't stop replaying it? Here's what's actually happening in your brain. You're not remembering the whole night equally. Your memory took a highlight reel and the final moment, then basically threw away the middle footage. This is peak end memory, and if you're building attraction, it's reshaping how people feel about you far more than you think. Research shows we don't sum up experiences as a balanced whole. We grab the peak moment and whatever happened last, then construct a narrative around those two anchors. The guy who had a mediocre dinner but walked her home under stars and lingered at the door talking beats the guy with a better restaurant who spent the final 20 minutes scrolling his phone. The peak doesn't even need to be romantic. It can be unplanned laughter, a real vulnerability, something that broke through the surface. But the end is your closing statement, and it matters more than most people realize. If a date winds down with you already mentally checked out, rushed goodbyes, or fade to black energy, the whole night deflates in her memory later. Flip that. End while momentum is still climbing, or close on genuine curiosity about the next time. That final frame is what she'll replay. So architect the ending. Don't let dates simply dissolve. Build toward something, even small, a conversation that shifted, a walk, a moment of real presence. Make the peak vivid and the exit linger. Attraction doesn't live in those 3 middle hours. It lives in the moments she actually remembers. Anticipation exceeds consummation. You know that feeling when you're waiting for someone to text you back and the fantasy of what they might say is somehow better than any actual message they could write? That gap between what you're imagining and what you'll actually get is where most attraction lives. It's not the kiss, it's the moment before. Not the answer, it's the question hanging in the air. Your brain is a prediction machine running scenarios on full volume, each one a little more exciting than the last. And the real moment, when it lands, is always smaller than the version you built in your head. It has to be. Reality can't compete with unlimited possibility. This is why the best relationships often feel a little less electric after the first month. Not because the person changed, but because you finally have data instead of potential. You stopped imagining and started knowing. The unknown is narcotic. The known is just real. Here's where the trap opens. Some people chase that high by keeping things vague, mysterious, or perpetually just out of reach. Mistaking this fog for depth or thinking sustained attraction means never quite arriving, always dangling the next level just beyond the fingertips. But that's exhausting for both people, a treadmill that never lets either of you land. The real skill is learning to shift, to let anticipation do its work early, and then let genuine intimacy, which is its own kind of thrill, take over. Otherwise, you spend your whole life reaching for the mirage instead of tasting the water that's actually there. Curiosity gap of mystery. You keep scrolling past the complete story, but stop dead at the teaser, and your brain won't let it go. Your mind hates incomplete patterns. It will lose sleep trying to finish them. This is the curiosity gap, and it runs like a hook through every moment someone stays interested in you. When a person gives you just enough information to matter but withholds the ending, you become temporarily obsessed with closing that gap. Think about the last time someone said, "I could tell you what happened, but," and then paused. You didn't walk away, you leaned in. Mystery isn't the absence of information, it's the promise of it. The person who reveals everything immediately becomes background noise. The one who shares selectively, who lets you see the edges of something bigger without spelling it out, becomes unforgettable, not because they're cold, but because they understand pacing. Attraction grows in the space between what you know and what you want to know. Most people mistake mystery for aloofness or games. It's neither. It means having enough depth that people can't categorize you in 5 minutes. It means asking questions that make them think instead of handing them answers. When you're with someone and feel like there's always something more to discover, genuine intrigue lives. The moment someone becomes completely predictable, the spark dims. So next time you're tempted to over-explain yourself or tell the whole story up front, pause instead. Let them wonder. Let them ask. That gap is where you stay alive in their mind. Zygarnic, unresolved tension. You know that feeling when someone starts a story and stops mid-sentence? Your brain literally cannot let it go. You find yourself replaying what they said hours later, wondering how it ended. That magnetic pull toward closure is the Zygarnik effect, and it works just as powerfully in attraction as it does anywhere else. When someone leaves things slightly unfinished in conversation, when there is a mystery you cannot quite solve about them, when a story has a gap you want to fill, you become obsessed with that person in a way that feels organic and completely voluntary. You think about them because your brain is doing what brains do, trying to complete the picture. The attraction isn't forced, it emerges from your own psychology working against you. Here's where it gets interesting. This is not manipulation if someone does it unconsciously, but it becomes manipulation the moment they weaponize it. A genuine person who naturally has depth, contradictions, and stories that don't all tie up neatly will activate this effect without trying. They are incomplete in your mind because they actually are complex. But someone who deliberately withholds information, creates false mystery, or strings you along is using this law to short-circuit your judgment. The difference lives in intention and reciprocal care. Real attraction built on this tension lasts because the person is genuinely worth thinking about. False mystery collapses the moment you realize there was nothing underneath. So pay attention. Does the unresolved feeling make you more curious about who they actually are, or just more attached to the feeling itself? Ambiguity sustains projection. You text someone you like, and they take 3 hours to reply. In those 3 hours, your brain doesn't sit still. It fills the gap. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're losing interest. Maybe they're playing it cool. The blankness becomes a screen, and you become the projectionist, casting your fears and hopes onto it until the empty space feels loaded with meaning. That's projection, and ambiguity is its fuel. The less someone says, the more room your mind has to imagine them as you want them to be. A mysterious person is attractive partly because they're a blank canvas. You get to paint them as your perfect match instead of colliding with who they actually are. The early stage of attraction thrives on this: a cryptic message, an unpredictable response pattern, a person who doesn't quite reveal themselves. These feel magnetic because your mind is doing all the work, filling them with depth and mystery and exactly the qualities you are hungry for. The trap lives in the gap between the person and your version of them. The more you project onto ambiguity, the more attached you become to the version you invented, not the human. And when they eventually reveal themselves, when the ambiguity breaks and reality shows up, the crash is real. The person you built in your head doesn't match the one sitting across from you. So notice when you're excited about someone because of what you're imagining versus what you actually know. The most sustainable attraction isn't built on a blank screen. It's built on seeing someone clearly, flaws and all, and choosing them anyway. Idealization and blank screen. 3 weeks in, they feel perfect. Texts come fast, laughter lands every time, and somehow they understand you like nobody else ever has. Except they don't, not really. What's happening is quieter and more dangerous. You're watching a blank screen and filling it with your own best-case scenario, playing it back like a film only you can see. The person you're attracted to is barely there yet. Your own desires are doing nearly all the work, and you're calling it love when it's really just a transaction between you and your own hopes. A blank screen never stays blank for long. A few weeks deeper, and they miss a text, disagree with you about something that matters, or mention a childhood memory that doesn't fit your narrative. The perfection doesn't evolve, it shatters. You feel deceived because you're convinced they changed, but the truth is simpler and more humbling. You finally started to see them, the rare people who don't crash at this moment, who find themselves still drawn in as the screen fills with actual human complexity and contradiction, have learned what attraction really needs to survive. Curiosity instead of projection. They stopped asking, "Who do I need this person to be?" and started asking, who actually is this person in their realness, in their mess? That shift from blank screen idealization to real person appreciation is where something genuine can finally root itself and grow. It's less cinematic, it's slower to ignite, but it's the only kind of attraction that doesn't burn itself out when the screen finally focuses and the film ends. Gain-loss theory of esteem. Remember the person who barely acknowledged you for months. Then 1 week, they started texting back within minutes, remembering things you said, showing up different. Something shifted, and now they feel more valuable than the friend who was steady kind from day one, which should make no sense, but it does. Your brain doesn't keep a fixed score of likability, it tracks the trajectory instead. A shift from cold to warm hits you harder neurologically than warmth that never wavered, because your nervous system treats movement as new information, as a gain, as proof you're winning ground. That momentum feels like something real is happening. This is gain-loss theory, and it's one of the stickiest forces in attraction psychology. The trap materializes when someone becomes emotionally inconsistent, pulling away, then reconnecting, distant, then suddenly attentive. They create constant micro gains, and your nervous system never settles. You chase the warmth because the contrast makes it feel more real, more earned, more worth fighting for. Stable affection, by comparison, starts to feel dull, even though consistency is actually where trust gets built. Your body doesn't care about logic. The dopamine hit of someone returning after absence floods harder than the steady warmth of someone who never left. It's a neurological thing, not a character flaw. The warning isn't to avoid people who change. It's to get curious when you're confusing the high of a gain with actual love. Sometimes the most magnetic people aren't the healthiest mirrors. And sometimes the quietest consistency is the biggest win you'll ever get, even if it doesn't feel like a victory at all. Ben Franklin investment effect. Benjamin Franklin noticed something centuries ago that neuroscience keeps proving true. You're more likely to love someone after you've done them a favor than if they've done one for you. Sounds backward, but here's what's actually happening inside your skull. When you invest time, energy, or emotional labor into someone, your brain faces a discomfort. It needs to explain why you just paid that price, so it works backward. The effort has already left your account, and your mind scrambles to justify the withdrawal. The story it lands on is the easiest one. This person must matter to me. The bigger the ask, the tighter the knot. Ask someone for something small and they'll do it. No skin off their nose. Ask them to drive across town, carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs, or have a vulnerable conversation they'd rather skip. Now their brain has to work. They've sacrificed something real, and the easiest explanation for that sacrifice becomes love, or at least a version of it. The flip side hits just as hard. When someone does something genuinely difficult for you, you don't just feel grateful, you feel bound to them, safer, more likely to show up again. That favor becomes a thread stitching you both together. The trap isn't that this isn't real. It absolutely is a real psychological phenomenon that shapes real relationships. The trap is believing this is the same thing as genuine connection. It's not. It's your brain doing the math between behavior and belief, trying to make the two sides balance. But recognizing this shift changes how you think about vulnerability and small asks in your life. The request itself is often where the relationship actually begins. Effort justification bonding, you've probably noticed it without naming it. After suffering through something pointless with someone, you felt oddly closer. A terrible movie, a brutal hike, a weird class, and after, a quiet bond. That's not sentiment, that's your neuroscience playing a trick, and it works every time. When your brain endures discomfort alongside another human, it unconsciously rewrites the story. This must matter, or why would I have done it? And if it matters, the person beside me must matter too. The harder the experience, the deeper the bond feels. This is why hazing creates loyalty, why couples who survive crisis feel fused, why your friends from that awful summer job feel like soulmates now. Your brain refuses to believe it wasted time or energy on someone unimportant that's too ego-threatening, so it inflates their value instead. Here's the sharp part. You can build this bond without cruelty or harm. Design activities with real friction, things that actually demand something from both of you. A challenging cooking class where you both fumble through recipes, a difficult hike where the path asks for your full attention. Volunteering somewhere legitimately demanding, not feel-good theater. The struggle doesn't need to be traumatic, it just needs to be real and chosen together. When someone pushes through something hard with you, their brain makes a quiet calculation. You become the reason that effort made sense. That's what binds deeper than comfort ever could. The shared struggle rewrites their internal story about your value, and neither of you has to say a word about it. Sunk cost in courtship, 18 months in, and your gut says this isn't working. They're kind enough, sure, but something's off. a flatness, a misalignment, the feeling that you're performing more than connecting. Your friends have noticed. Deep down, you have too, but leaving sounds impossible because you've already spent the time, the vulnerability, the money on vacations that felt like they were supposed to mean something. Walking away feels like burning down a house you spent a year building, so you stay one more month. Maybe they'll change. Maybe you misread the signs. Maybe the next conversation will unlock something. This is sunk cost thinking dressed up as hope. And it's particularly vicious in romantic life because it wraps itself in language that sounds noble: loyalty, commitment, giving it a real chance. The trap deepens because every week you invest adds another invisible layer to the debt. Your brain stops asking whether this person is actually good for you and starts asking how much you've already lost. The math becomes, if I leave now, all of that was for nothing. So you rationalize staying. You manufacture small moments of connection. You quiet the voice that knows better. Eventually, you're not even choosing the person anymore. You're choosing to avoid the shame of admitting the investment didn't pay off. Here's the move that cuts through it. Those 18 months already happened. They're done. They're not in your future, only in your past. The only real decision you have is whether this person fits who you're becoming starting right now, today. Everything else is just fear wearing a calculator, scarcity and limited availability. You walk into a store and see a sign, only 3 left. Your hand moves before your brain does. That flash of urgency, that sudden leap from maybe someday to I need this now, that is scarcity working on you. And it works because your nervous system treats scarcity like a survival signal. When something is rare, your ancestral brain whispers that it won't be around tomorrow, so grab it. And that same wiring lights up whether you are buying a limited edition sneaker or wondering if you should commit to someone who keeps mentioning other people who want them. The psychology is identical. Real scarcity, genuinely limited supply, genuinely finite time slots, genuinely exclusive access creates real pressure because loss feels sharper than gain. You hurt more losing $10 than you enjoy finding $10. So when a person or opportunity gets positioned as rare, your mind calculates the cost of missing it as much bigger than the benefit of having it. This is where attraction gets dangerous because people can manufacture scarcity with fake deadlines, manufactured exclusivity, and artificial fear of missing out. These all trigger the same signal in your nervous system. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between this person is actually rare and exceptional and this person is telling me other people want them. The move here is simple. When you feel that urgent pull, pause and ask whether the scarcity is real or performed. A truly valuable person or opportunity does not need to remind you it is going away. That warning sign itself is often the tell. Reactance from restriction. Watch someone's eyes the moment they hear they can't have something. The shift is instant, almost audible. A person becomes mysteriously more attractive the second they become unavailable. A food tastes more compelling after you've sworn it off. You're not imagining that pull, it's reactance, and your nervous system was literally wired to fight back against lost freedom. When someone restricts your choices through rules, scarcity, or deliberate withdrawal, your brain doesn't accept the limit. It rebels. That thing you barely noticed 5 minutes ago now feels precious, almost sacred. The person who was background noise becomes intriguing the moment they pull away. Scarcity doesn't just make things rare, it makes them charged with desire, which is exactly why playing hard to get actually works. Not because games are emotionally honest, but because reactance is raw neurology. The harder someone seems to get, the harder your mind works to crack them open. You want what the world tells you you can't have. And that wanting feels real, feels true, because it genuinely is happening inside you. But here's the part nobody whispers about. Reactance is a sprint, not a marathon. It creates attraction, fast, sharp, almost violent in intensity, but attraction built purely on restriction burns out the moment the restriction lifts, because it was never really about the person sitting across from you. It was about the freedom you felt slipping between your fingers. Use this knowledge if you need to, but understand the ceiling it creates. The people you actually keep around aren't those who restrict you most. They're the ones you choose freely, completely, every single day without needing a manufactured reason. Become that person for someone else instead. Romeo and Juliet intensification. There's a reason lovers always seem most desperate when they're told they can't be together. Obstacles don't weaken attraction, they pour gasoline on it. When your parents forbid it, when timing is impossible, when you both know it's complicated, something neurological shifts. The brain treats resistance like a puzzle that demands solving, and suddenly this person becomes the only solution worth pursuing. Psychologists call it Romeo and Juliet intensification, and it shows up everywhere. The forbidden coworker, the person from the wrong background, the already taken someone who suddenly seems irreplaceable. The barrier itself becomes the aphrodisiac. Here's where it gets sticky. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between real danger and manufactured scarcity. If something is hard to get, your ancient brain assumes it must be valuable. Combine that with the stress hormones flooding your body during conflict or sneaking around, and suddenly passion feels like proof of love. You confuse the adrenaline for destiny. You mistake the secrecy for depth. Weeks of forbidden texts feel more intimate than months of normal dating. The trap is real. Once the obstacle disappears, the partner approves, the relationship is public, the timeline clears, many couples find the electricity gone. The attraction was never about this person. It was about the fight. It was about being in a story where love defies odds. When you're no longer the characters in a tragedy, you're just two regular people deciding if you actually work. The next time you feel pulled toward something explicitly forbidden, pause. Ask yourself, would I want this person in a world where having them was easy? Social proof of preselection. Watch a person at the party who doesn't look like a model, doesn't kill with jokes, but somehow the room tilts toward them. People lean in, laugh with them, glance back when they step away. Now watch what happens when someone new arrives and catches that energy. Their own attraction flips on like a switch they didn't know existed. That's preselection at work, and it's brutal in its simplicity. Your brain doesn't evaluate attraction in a vacuum. If others have already vetted someone and found them worth their time and attention, your brain outsources the hard work of deciding. The risk feels manageable now. The real magic is that preselection has almost nothing to do with the people doing the choosing. It's pure social proof operating underneath. A woman watching you, valued by your genuine circle, wanted by your schedule, missed when you disappear. She doesn't have to convince herself to be interested. The validation already happened somewhere else. You're not asking her to leap on an unknown. You're simply pointing at something she can already see. This is why isolated people feel stuck in attraction, while people rooted in real friendships and real commitments seem to date with less friction. The trap is the reverse. Chasing, making someone feel like the sole source of your value, the only vote that matters. That's anti-preselection, and it screams scarcity. You become the person nobody else wanted. The actual move isn't game playing. It's just living, showing up for your friends, keeping promises to yourself, building a life that hums quietly. When someone sees you already chosen by the people close to you by your own standards, something shifts. You stop being a proposal and become a prize. Mate choice copying. You walk into a coffee shop and notice someone sitting alone, unremarkable, until you see three people gravitating toward their table, laughing, leaning in. Suddenly they seem magnetic. Nothing about them changed, but your perception just did. That's mate choice copying in its purest form. We find people more attractive when we see them already chosen by others. It's not that you consciously think, well, if they like them, I should too. It's deeper. Your brain reads their interest as a signal that this person has hidden value you might have missed on your own. This gets ruthless in dating. A single person at a bar feels invisible. The moment a date arrives, other eyes snap over. A profile with no matches sits quiet. The same profile with a wedding photo gets suddenly flooded with messages. The attractiveness didn't shift. The evidence of selection did. Researchers have shown this repeatedly. People rate identical faces as more desirable when told others find them desirable. Our wiring doesn't trust our own judgment as much as we trust the crowd's, and that gap is where real power lives. The trap is that this copies upward, not downward. You notice who others want. You rarely notice who's been repeatedly rejected. And because attraction clusters, the already chosen become more chosen. Popularity begets more popularity. It's why confidence and social proof are so intertwined. Not because confident people are objectively better, but because being chosen reads as confident to everyone watching. If you want to shift how someone sees you, the real move isn't to become different. It's to become visibly chosen first and watch everything else follow. Contrast effect of company. Walk into a room where three friends are kind and funny, then someone objectively more attractive shows up. Suddenly those friends dim a little, not because they changed, but because your brain just recalibrated what magnetic even means. That's the contrast effect at work, and it lives way deeper than looks. Your entire read on someone shifts based on who they're standing next to. A person who seems confident around anxious people looks shaky when surrounded by calm achievers. Someone witty among quiet folks kills. That same person among comedians feels flat. Your brain doesn't rate people in isolation. It rates them relative to the immediate context, and that's the engine of how attraction actually works in real time. The wild part is how weaponizable it becomes. You can shift how drawn someone feels to you without saying anything, just by controlling the contrast around you. Want to feel more interesting? Spend time around people slightly less put together, less confident, less sharp. The comparison does the work for you. It sounds cold because it is, but it's also how every social hierarchy operates. If you're constantly around people sharper, funnier, more accomplished than you, you'll watch yourself fade in conversations, even though you're the exact same person you always were. The room changed, not you, but the effect is identical. You feel smaller. The real move is simple awareness. Notice when you're picking your crew for contrast reasons. Notice when the people around you are actually making you disappear. Sometimes the best attraction hack isn't about working harder. It's finding spaces where your real self is already the interesting one. Status conferred by audience. Walk into a room where someone is being treated like the main character and you feel it before you think it. People lean in when they speak. Eyes track them. Conversations pause for their stories. None of that status existed in isolation. It was literally conferred by the room. The moment that person steps outside that circle, they're just another person with opinions. The magic wasn't theirs alone. It belonged to the audience's collective decision to look. This is what gets ignored in attraction psychology. You don't radiate status like a light bulb radiates heat. Status is a permission slip from other people, renewed every single moment. And here's the sharp part. The more you see this clearly, the less you chase it, and the more you accidentally invite it. Because when you stop performing for the invisible court and actually engage with the one person in front of you, something flips. They feel seen instead of evaluated. That presence, that non-performance, becomes its own gravity. In rooms full of people trying to be noticed, the person who is actually here stands out in a way that costs nothing. You don't need the audience's vote to feel valuable, but paradoxically, when you stop needing it, people start conferring it anyway. The real move isn't learning how to act high status or memorizing moves from someone else's playbook. It's learning to be genuinely interested while being genuinely yourself and letting other people's attention follow wherever that naturally takes you. Status without the performance isn't an act or a strategy. It's just what happens when you're not auditioning anymore. Level 1 to 100 attraction psychology that gets more powerful as you go. Reputation cascades in groups. Walk into a room where everyone's already decided someone's worth watching, and you'll see the cascade in real time. Not because that person did anything in the last 5 minutes, but because the crowd's attention has already pooled there, and attention is contagious. Your brain doesn't evaluate fresh. It reads the room first. One person finds someone compelling, mentions it to a friend who trusts them. That friend nods and leans in, and suddenly 5 people are treating this stranger like they're the most interesting person there, all because the original signal got mirrored back and amplified across the group. The cascade doesn't need truth, it just needs momentum. A rumor spreads faster than fact-checking ever catches up, especially in tight groups where everyone's watching what everyone else is watching. After the 4th or 5th person has already decided, you're not making an independent judgment anymore. You're sampling the collective mood and thinking, if this many people are drawn in, I probably should trust that signal. Your brain takes the shortcut because it's efficient and social survival used to depend on it. The wild part is how invisible it feels from the inside. You think you're choosing, but you're mostly just riding a wave someone else started, mistaking the echo for your own voice. And here's what gets stranger. Being the person trying to create attraction within a group means you're either riding a cascade or fighting one, almost never standing neutral. The real shortcut to building momentum isn't desperation or performance. It's giving people something genuinely real to pass along, then trusting that one true observation spreads further than 100 rehearsed versions ever will. Costly signaling honesty. There is a moment in every relationship where someone tells you a truth that costs them something. They admit they were wrong. They confess a fear. They show you a version of themselves that could get rejected. You feel it immediately, that shift in trust, because you know they just paid a price to be honest with you. That payment is the signal that matters. Anyone can say they're trustworthy. Admitting you screwed up when nobody would have known is what makes you believable. Costly signaling works because deception is cheap. A lie costs almost nothing. But honesty that risks your image, your comfort, or your status, that's expensive. Your nervous system knows the difference. When someone admits weakness or failure, especially when they could have hidden it, your brain registers. This person values truth more than they value protecting themselves. That's the opposite of manipulation. That's someone choosing you over themselves. The trap most people fall into is thinking honesty is just saying true things. It's not. Generic honesty, I don't cheat, or I'm reliable. These are claims anyone can make. Costly honesty is when you volunteer information that hurts you. You admit something embarrassing. You name a mistake that changes how they see you. You stay vulnerable after they see a crack. This is what builds real attraction, especially at higher levels, because people don't fall for your perfection. They fall for your willingness to be imperfect in front of them. Start noticing who tells you things they didn't have to. That's someone signaling that your presence matters more than their armor. Handicap principle display. You've probably noticed how the most confident person in the room is often the one who admits a flaw first, not in a self-deprecating way, but casually, like they're so secure it doesn't even touch them. That's the handicap principle, and it's magnetic. The idea comes from biology. A peacock's tail is a massive liability, makes him slower, more visible to predators, harder to hide. And yet peahens find him irresistible because the tail is proof. He's so healthy, so resource-rich that he can afford to be inefficient. He's broadcasting, I'm so good, I can survive being this vulnerable. When you display a real handicap, a stutter, a scar, a failure you've moved past, even just being the first one to say, I don't know, something shifts in how people read you. They unconsciously interpret it as strength, not weakness, because you're signaling that your other qualities are so solid you don't need the performance. A surgeon who tells you about the complicated case that humbled her, an entrepreneur who laughs about the business that went under, a person who admits they're nervous before a presentation. These aren't confessions that make you smaller, they're proof you're big enough to absorb the hit without crumbling. The real trap is manufacturing flaws or performing false modesty that reads as phony instantly, and people taste the dishonesty. It's about letting your genuine handicaps breathe instead of burning energy to hide them. The vulnerability itself becomes the strongest thing about you because it proves everything else is real and earned. That's why people lean in closer when you stop pretending. Provisioning versus genetic cues. There's a moment in most early relationships where you catch yourself thinking, can this person actually build something with me? That shift from pure chemistry to capability, from butterflies to checking their job, that's not shallow, it's your nervous system doing math. Genetic cues are the immediate stuff. Symmetry, energy, how they move through space, they happen before thought. Provisioning cues are different. They're signals that someone can handle responsibility, follow through, show up. A messy apartment doesn't kill attraction, but reliability does something deeper. It rewires the nervous system from want to trust. The wild part is that both matter and they're often in tension. You can be attracted to someone with all the right genetic markers, but zero follow-through. Or you can respect someone's stability while feeling zero spark across the table. Evolution didn't design us to pick one or the other. It designed us to want both, and that's why the search is hard. What gets really interesting is how much provisioning cues can actually amplify genetic ones over time. Someone who shows up, remembers details about your life, handles pressure without drama, their face becomes more attractive to you. Your brain literally starts coding them differently. The reverse happens too. Genetic appeal fades fast when someone flakes or avoids. So when you're caught between someone who makes you feel alive and someone who makes you feel secure, ask whether they can grow into both. And ask harder whether you're actually ready to notice when they do. That gap between what attracts you and what sustains you might be the truest question you can ask. Parental investment asymmetry. You've probably noticed that women get pickier with time and men don't always. There's a hidden biological reason tucked inside that asymmetry, and it's not about culture or morality. It's about whose body carries the stakes. From an evolutionary lens, pregnancy costs a woman 9 months minimum and decades of resource drain. A man's biological cost is a night. That gap in investment is the entire foundation of why attraction pressures build so differently between genders and why it shapes who pursues versus who gets to choose. This doesn't mean women are gatekeepers or men are callous. It means the math of commitment and risk is literally written into bodies differently. When someone has more to lose, more time, more physical cost, more biological window, they tend to screen harder. They ask more questions before saying yes. They notice red flags faster. Meanwhile, the person with lower biological investment can afford to cast wider nets, move faster, be less discriminate. And here's where it gets interesting for your own awareness. This asymmetry doesn't disappear just because you intellectually reject it. It still hums beneath attraction decisions, dating timelines, and what people signal as valuable in a partner. A woman choosing fast can feel transgressive because the ancestral pattern whispers that she should choose slow. A man holding back commitment can feel counterintuitive for the same reason. Neither is wrong. But if you see this invisible current clearly, you stop being moved by it blindly. You can watch your own choices with clear eyes and notice where ancient math is still running the show without your permission. Sexual strategies pluralism. You walk into a room and notice 3 couples. One pair met on a dating app and married in 8 months. Another has been together for 12 years, monogamous, still texting during work. A third is polyamorous, has 2 partners, and throws dinner parties where everyone knows everyone. Now ask yourself, which one has the right strategy? The answer is none and all of them. Sexual strategies pluralism is the idea that humans don't have one mating playbook. We have dozens, and they evolved because different circumstances demanded different solutions. In ancestral times, some people thrived with quick, low-commitment pairings. Others survived by bonding deeply with one partner and building kin networks. Still others played the long game of serial monogamy. All of these strategies worked, which is why they're still wired into us. The problem is that we live in a culture that often pretends there's one correct path. The monogamous romantic narrative, the forever partner, the nuclear family. We pathologize deviations instead of recognizing them as different solutions to the same human puzzle. The trap is invisible until you see it. When you realize that someone else's attraction strategy isn't a failure of yours, something shifts. You stop feeling threatened by people who want different things. You stop judging your own desires against a borrowed template. And maybe, just maybe, you start asking what strategy actually fits your life, your temperament, and your honest needs, rather than the story you were told you should want. That question alone can undo years of quiet resentment and clear space for what you actually want to build. Short-term versus long-term shifts. You've probably felt this before. That rush when someone leans in close, makes eye contact, laughs at your joke, your pupils dilate, your chest gets warm. That's level 1 attraction, and it's real, but it's also fleeting. It exists in the nervous system, not in the mind. 3 drinks later, the lights come up, and sometimes that person looks completely different because the chemistry was contextual, not rooted. The short-term shift is neurochemical and environmental. It depends on novelty, scarcity, and the right moment. It's fragile because it relies on conditions you can't always control. Now contrast that with long-term attraction, which is slower and stranger to watch unfold. It builds when someone shows you they actually listen, when they remember small things you said months ago, when they handle conflict without running or attacking. That kind of shift lives in your mind, in the narrative you construct about who they are and what you mean to each other. It's durable because it's built on consistency, not intensity. Here's what matters for you. The short-term stuff is easy to manufacture. You can dress well, tell good stories, create tension, but the long-term shifts only happen when the person behind the attraction is actually reliable. And that's why so many relationships that feel electric at first plateau fast. You can't sustain level 1 neurochemistry without building level 70 trust underneath it. The hidden cost, if you're building something that lasts, focus on being the person someone trusts, not the person who makes their heart race in a bar. The race will follow, but only if the ground is solid. Sociosexual orientation variance. Two people walk into the same room, see the same attractive person, and feel completely different things. Not because one has good taste and one doesn't, but because their wiring around sex and connection is fundamentally different. Some folks feel genuine sexual attraction only after building deep emotional intimacy. Others feel it instantly, towards strangers, no strings necessary. Neither is broken, both are real. This variance, sociosexual orientation, shapes how you read signals, what you want, and why someone who seems perfect on paper might feel wrong in practice. Someone high in sociosexual unrestricted orientation can separate physical desire from emotional commitment without guilt. They're wired for novelty and variety. Someone restricted needs the emotional foundation first. Sex without it feels hollow, not liberating. And plenty of people sit somewhere in the middle, shifting depending on context. The trap most people fall into is assuming everyone experiences attraction the same way they do, then getting hurt or resentful when they don't. You pressure someone into casual because you can handle it. They can't. You wait for feelings to deepen before touching anyone. They're confused why you're holding back. You're not incompatible in character. You're incompatible in your baseline wiring around desire. Here's what matters. Sociosexual orientation isn't something you negotiate or fix about yourself or another person. It's part of how you're built. So instead of trying to change someone's orientation or hide yours, the real move is knowing your own baseline before you get tangled up and seeking people whose natural rhythm actually matches yours. That alignment, not compromise, is what makes attraction sustainable and keeps resentment from poisoning what could have been simple. Age preference asymmetries. Swipe through any dating app for 5 minutes and the math reveals itself instantly. A 40-year-old man gravitates toward 25-year-olds while women his age wait in the reject pile. A 32-year-old woman rarely scrolls down for younger men, but men in their 50s do it without thinking twice. The pattern repeats so reliably, it might as well be carved into the algorithm, except it's not written in code. It's written in psychology, tangled up with economics, biology, and ego, all feeding each other at once. Men chase youth because they've absorbed the equation. Youth equals fertility, visual appeal, and the quiet status boost of being chosen by someone younger. Women hunt for stability and resources, traits that cluster around older men who've already proven they can hold it together. But here's the real knot. Women's preferences aren't just desires. They're survival calculations shaped by centuries where their options were smaller and margins for error were thinner. A woman dating a man 10 years older is making a different bet than a man dating a woman 10 years younger. The asymmetry didn't fall from the sky. It was built stone by stone through generations of unequal power, so women had to choose sharper, more carefully, more strategically. Now pay attention to yourself the next time attraction sparks. Is this your genuine pull towards someone? Or are you chasing a script someone else wrote about what an age should be? Are you attracted to the actual human or to the fantasy you've stapled onto their birthday? That gap between the person and your projection, that's where real intimacy goes to suffocate. Ovulatory preference shifts. Your taste in faces literally changes monthly, and you probably never clock it happening. Research on ovulation cycles uncovered something that breaks the myth of stable attraction. Women nearing peak fertility showed unmistakable pull toward masculine features. The sharper jawlines, the deeper voices, the genetic markers of raw health. But step into the low fertility phases, and those same women softened noticeably toward rounder, more nurturing faces. Same person, same photographs, different wiring, different hunger, all driven by biology's calendar. The reason this sticks is because it rewrites what attraction means. You are not being shallow or indecisive. You are running an ancient optimization algorithm. During high fertility windows, your nervous system lights up harder for genetic strength because the stakes feel evolutionary. Off cycle, the attraction dial shifts toward stability and consistency. Someone who looks like they will still be there. Your body is not broken. It is adjusting what it reads as valuable based on reproductive timing. Most of us never connect these dots, so when attraction feels confused, you want someone badly one week, then the pull softens the next. You blame yourself for being unstable or fickle. Wrong interpretation entirely. What you are actually experiencing is sophisticated biology having a real conversation with your nervous system about what matters right now. The move here is simpler than it sounds. Stop expecting attraction to stay flat and constant. Watch the rhythm across weeks instead of treating each moment as gospel. That pull you feel towards someone might be telling you something worth listening to about timing, need state, or what your deeper systems are actually hunting for. The pattern is the message. Menstrual cycle voice change. You're listening to someone speak and their voice suddenly lands different, brighter, clearer, more magnetic. You can't quite name it, but something in you leans in. That shift is real, and it happens on schedule. During a woman's high fertility window, hormones literally reshape her vocal cords. Testosterone-adjacent compounds tighten tissues, estrogen peaks lift and brighten the tone, and pitch rises just enough to change how she sounds. It's not a choice or a performance. It's biology broadcasting itself through the voice box. The listener feels this without knowing it. A man might find a woman's voice more compelling on day 14 of her cycle and chalk it up to her being in a better mood or more animated, completely unaware her larynx shifted. Meanwhile, women often unconsciously amplify their pitch during fertile windows as an automatic response to their own hormonal state. And some research suggests they shift clothing choices, posture, and body language too, a whole constellation of signals operating below awareness, each one reinforcing the others. Here's where it gets personal. If you are a woman, you might notice you feel most comfortable in your own voice at certain points in your cycle, rather than always chasing someone else's image of what attractive should sound like. If you're the listener, stay curious about what you're actually responding to, whether it's genuine connection or an ancient pattern humming quietly underneath. The voice always tells the truth the body is living, and most of us just never learn to read it. Mate value self-calibration. Your nervous system is running a calculation right now that you've probably never named. When you walk into a room, your brain does a lightning-fast inventory, checking your appearance, scanning for threat, measuring your energy against whoever's nearby, pulling up the memory of that rejection from 2 years ago. It feels like intuition, but it's actually a survival algorithm so old and automatic that you've stopped noticing it's even happening. This is mate value self-calibration, and it's the invisible price tag you're wearing in every conversation and every risk you take. Most people mark themselves down without knowing why. One bad breakup, one awkward moment, one text that died on read, and suddenly you're operating from a permanent discount. You internalize that smaller number and believe it's the truth. Then you walk into rooms from a place of scarcity, like you're lucky to be noticed at all, and that energy broadcasts so clearly that others pick it up instantly. It triggers something that reads as, "This person believes they're worth less," which somehow makes you actually worth less in that interaction. Real calibration isn't ego or arrogance, it's honesty. You're tallying your actual strengths, your humor, your loyalty, what you've built, the way you listen. You're also seeing your real gaps without weaponizing them against yourself. Then you show up holding that honest number, not lower, not inflated either, just present. That tiny shift in your internal price tag changes everything about who responds to you and how they treat you once they do. Market value recalibration shock. You know that moment when someone you've been chasing suddenly becomes unavailable, and their entire presence shifts in your mind, not their face or voice, but your calculation of their worth. This is market value recalibration shock, and it strips bare how much of what felt like genuine preference was actually scarcity and resistance rewiring your nervous system. When someone is eager and responsive, your brain discounts them without you noticing. They become too easy, and easy reads as cheap. But the second they pull away, busy or with someone else or simply done, your mind panics and retroactively inflates their value. Suddenly, you notice their laugh, their mind, the magnetic way they held space. None of that changed. Your market calculation did. The trap deepens when you misread this value spike as real love, convincing yourself you always knew they were special and were just blind before. But blindness wasn't it. You were running a constant unconscious auction where nothing had a fixed price. Everything fluctuated with demand and your access to it. Here is the cruelest reversal. Win them back during that peak, and the moment they become available again, the recalibration flips. They flatten. The spell collapses because it was never truly about them. It was about the gap itself, the distance between what you had and what you couldn't reach. The next time you want someone most, try pausing and asking whether you want them or whether you want the ache of wanting. That one question can cut through years of chasing phantoms that vanish the instant they land in your hand. Attachment style activation. You've probably noticed that you act different ways with different people, more guarded with one person, more open with another, sometimes needy, sometimes distant. That's not randomness. That's your attachment system waking up and reaching for whoever is in front of you. When attraction starts, especially in those early electric moments, your nervous system doesn't whisper politely. It activates old patterns faster than your conscious mind can catch them. If you grew up with someone who was inconsistently warm, you might find yourself chasing the warmth of someone who's just a little bit aloof. If safety meant staying small and unnoticed, you might choose partners who ask for nothing just so you can avoid the terror of being fully seen. The deepest part of this, you don't choose this activation. It happens below the line, beneath language. Your body recognizes a familiar emotional signature, even if that signature is one that hurt you before, and leans toward it like a plant reaching for a weak light. The person you find magnetic is often the person who is shaped exactly like your earliest wounds. Here is what actually changes the game. knowing which of your buttons they are pressing, not to shame yourself for it, but to give your grown self a vote in the room. That small pause between activation and action is where real freedom lives, where you can feel the pull and still choose to turn. When you feel drawn towards someone, ask yourself gently, am I choosing this person or am I choosing the familiar feeling of working to be loved? Anxious protest behavior. You feel them pull back, a text unanswered, a tone that shifts, and suddenly you're the one going cold, or you're asking for reassurance wrapped up as an accusation, or you're texting at midnight. You watch yourself do it and you can't quite stop. That's anxious protest behavior, the moment when your nervous system reads withdrawal as abandonment and your body floods with the same alarm it would sound if real danger were closing in. Someone with anxious attachment doesn't think they need space. The translation is instant and total. I'm being left. So the protest fires the manufactured coldness, protecting yourself before they hurt you, the accusation dressed as a question, the demand for clarity that lands like an argument, the hurt delivered as a weapon. Underneath every move is the same desperation. You're trying to regulate your own panic by forcing any reaction from them, proof that they still care, that you're not actually disappearing. The trap is that this behavior almost always pushes them further away, which confirms your original terror and tightens the spiral tighter. The shift doesn't come from white-knuckling yourself into better behavior or pretending you don't feel scared. It comes from catching yourself in that single moment before you act. The micropause where you can ask what you actually feel underneath the urge to move. I'm terrified they're leaving is a completely different sentence than why are you ignoring me? One opens something, the other weaponizes the fear. That pause, that naming what's real underneath, is where the actual power lives. Avoidant deactivating strategies. You're 3 months into something real with someone, and suddenly the flaws arrive. The way they chew, their laugh, how they never quite remember what you told them last week. Nothing catastrophic happened. No betrayal, no fight. But your brain is running a highlight reel of disappointments, and it feels totally justified. What you're actually experiencing is a defense mechanism called deactivation, and it's designed to protect you by making the person less attractive, so closeness feels less risky. Avoidant people, and honestly, all of us under enough anxiety, do this instinctively when intimacy starts to feel threatening. The closer you get, the more your nervous system panics, so it manufactures distance by making the other person feel wrong. You find reasons to pull back. Their neediness is too much. They're not ambitious enough. The chemistry is fading. None of this is false exactly, but it's also not the full picture. It's your brain's way of saying, this is getting too vulnerable, by saying, this person is not right. The trap is that these strategies work short term. You feel safer, less exposed, back in control. But they also sabotage every relationship that reaches the depth where real safety could actually exist, leaving you cycling through the same early stage pattern over and over again. If you recognize yourself doing this, suddenly seeing only flaws in someone who felt good weeks ago, pause before you act on it. Ask yourself whether you're reacting to a genuine incompatibility or whether your nervous system is just scared. That distinction, small as it sounds, changes everything about what you do next. Fearful, disorganized push-pull. You know that person who pulls you close one day and goes silent the next? Not calculated, not strategic, just genuinely torn between two equal terrors, the terror of being alone and the terror of being known. That's fearful, disorganized attachment, and it's magnetic and exhausting all at once. These folks learned early that closeness meant chaos or unpredictability, so their nervous system never settled into a safe rhythm around love. Instead, they oscillate. They text you late at night like you're oxygen, then vanish for days like you burned them. The push-pull isn't manipulation, it's panic. Here's where attraction gets sticky. This pattern hypnotizes you. You keep chasing because you saw the real version of them in those genuine moments. You think the withdrawal is a test or a mood or something you can fix. But what's actually happening is their attachment system is literally at war with itself. Approach feels dangerous. Retreat feels necessary. Repeat. And if you're drawn to them, especially if you have anxious attachment yourself, you can spend years trying to crack the code of someone who doesn't have a code, just a broken thermostat. What matters to notice, this isn't love that needs rescuing. It's a nervous system that needs professional help to rewire. You cannot organize someone else's chaos by being patient or consistent enough. That's the trap. If you're watching someone toggle between heat and frost, and you're thinking, maybe if I'm different, take that as your signal to step back. Their healing isn't your job. Your job is noticing when you're being pulled into someone else's emergency. Attachment mismatch trap. Two people meet and start running at different speeds. One's already naming a future, while the other's still learning your coffee order, or maybe the reverse. Neither tempo is wrong, but the gap between how fast you each attach becomes the invisible fault line where real damage starts. One person builds a story, the other's still on page one, and that space doesn't close on its own. It deepens until someone feels suffocated and the other feels abandoned. The trap isn't that mismatches exist. They're almost guaranteed early on. The trap is that you rarely say it out loud, so both of you end up feeling gaslit instead of just out of sync. The fast attacher feels rejected for moving at their natural pace. The slow one feels pressured for protecting their own rhythm. Each reads the other's speed as a character flaw instead of just different nervous systems doing their job. What makes it particularly cruel is that switching speeds doesn't fix it. Forcing yourself to attach faster breeds resentment, and asking someone to slow down feels like you're saying their capacity to feel is too much. The real move happens before patterns calcify. Back in the conversation phase, when you can still see clearly, ask directly, how soon do you usually know? What scares you most early on? How do you show up when you like someone? These aren't romantic questions. They're preventative. They let both of you spot the gap before you're halfway across it, expecting the other person to be standing right where you are. Intermittent reinforcement hooking, that 3-day silence before they text back, and suddenly you're alive again. The warmth one moment, distance the next, and you find yourself chasing the warm moments harder than you ever chased consistency. That's intermittent reinforcement, and it hijacks something primal in your neurology. A reward that comes unpredictably hits your dopamine system way harder than a reward that's guaranteed. Your brain doesn't just want the thing, it starts hunting for it. The uncertainty becomes addictive. Slot machines work this way. Texts from the person you're into work this way. Even your own attention span works this way when algorithms feed you exactly one scroll of gold followed by 2 scrolls of nothing. The dangerous part is that people can weaponize this without even knowing it. Someone who's inconsistently available, inconsistently affectionate, inconsistently honest, they're not necessarily playing games. They might just be chaotic or avoidant. but your nervous system treats the unpredictability like a puzzle worth solving, and solving puzzles triggers reward. So you stay. You invest more. You analyze every message for hidden meaning. The person becomes more magnetic not because they're giving you more, but because they're giving you less in a scattered way. The real move here isn't to shame yourself for getting hooked. It's to notice when you're chasing consistency from someone instead of receiving it. Pay attention to that gap between what you're working toward and what's actually there. That's where the hook lives, and that's where you get to make a different choice. Variable reward, anticipation, dopamine. You know that feeling when you check your phone hoping for a text that might or might not be there? That little rush of possibility even before you see anything? That is the whole game, and it is running at full power right now in your nervous system. Your brain is not actually excited about what you have. It is flooded with dopamine about what might be coming. This is not a bug. It is the most addictive feature human desire has ever evolved. Slot machines, dating apps, social media refreshes, even texting someone who sometimes responds quickly and sometimes disappears, they all work because the uncertainty itself becomes the drug. Your brain would rather have an unpredictable reward than a guaranteed one. A partner who is consistently loving but predictable will never hit like a partner who is sometimes cold, sometimes hot, always keeping you guessing. The variability rewires your dopamine system to crave the anticipation more than the actual contact. This is why absence can make attraction sharper, why breadcrumbs feel like feasts, why you keep opening that app. The dopamine comes not from certainty, but from the gap between hope and not knowing. Once you see this pattern in yourself, in how you show up with someone, you can choose differently, not by being predictable, but by being real in a way that does not depend on scrambling someone's reward system to keep them close. The most powerful connection is not the one that keeps someone guessing. It is the one that makes them feel safe enough to stop needing to guess at all. Wanting versus liking split. You've probably felt this. You want something so badly it occupies your whole brain, and then you get it and feel almost nothing. A piece of clothing you hunted for weeks. A person you fantasized about. The dopamine system doesn't care about the actual thing. It cares about the gap between where you are and where you want to be. That gap is where desire lives. Satisfaction closes the gap, and when the gap closes, the wanting stops cold. This is why new relationships feel electric and decade-long ones feel like furniture. Not because the person changed, but because your brain stopped running the chase narrative. Liking is the thing itself. Wanting is the story you tell about needing it. In deep attraction, the highest level players understand this split and use it. They keep small gaps alive. Mystery, unpredictability, a sense that the other person is still slightly out of reach. Not through games or manipulation, but through genuine autonomy and depth that never fully resolves. Someone with a rich inner life, their own priorities, their own mystery, they stay wanted because your brain never quite catches them. The person who gives you everything immediately, your wanting collapses the same day. If you're on either side of attraction right now, ask yourself, am I drawn to this because of who they are or because of who they let me think I could become? That answer tells you if you're in the liking category or still chasing the wanting. Real connection needs both, but most people don't know how to keep wanting alive without creating actual distance. Uncertainty amplifies obsession. Think about the last time someone texted you back after 3 days of silence, how your phone buzzed and your whole body moved. Now compare that to someone who replies within an hour every single time. The inconsistent person hooks you harder, not because they're mysterious or special, but because your brain is literally chasing a pattern it can't predict. Neuroscience calls this intermittent reinforcement. You can call it what it feels like, torture disguised as love. When the reward is unpredictable, your dopamine spikes higher than it would for a guaranteed response. Your nervous system gets trained to keep chasing because you never know when the next hit is coming. Same mechanism that keeps people pulling slot machine handles all night. But here's the real trap. Uncertainty doesn't just feel intense. It completely rewires how you think about the person. You start interpreting their distance as depth, their delayed responses as mysterious, their coldness as independence worth respecting. You build entire narratives to justify the treatment until you've constructed a whole person in your mind that barely resembles who they actually are. Meanwhile, they're just being inconsistent, not doing anything exceptional, just doing nothing consistently. What breaks the spell is noticing the difference between someone who makes you uncertain of their feelings and someone who makes you feel sure. The certain one will feel boring at first, almost ordinary. That's the trick your brain plays. It mistakes confusion for connection, and it mistakes frequency of thought for depth of feeling. The ordinariness of consistency is actually the clarity you need, even though it doesn't generate the obsession that feels like proof of love. Limerence intrusive thinking. You're at work, mid-sentence in a meeting, and their face cuts through, not a memory, an intrusion. Your brain hijacks the next 5 minutes, what they said, how they looked, whether they were thinking of you. Then you're back to the spreadsheet, slightly embarrassed, slightly furious that you can't turn it off. That's limerence intrusive thinking, and it's not a weakness in your attention span. It's what obsessive attraction looks like from the inside. Psychologist Dorothy Tenoff separated this from love decades ago. Love grows warm and inclusive. Limerence is a laser pointed at one person, involuntary and relentless. Your nervous system has flagged them as threat or prize, and now it's running loops you didn't authorize. What did their text mean? Why the delay? If I'd phrased it differently, would they want me? The vicious part is you're not choosing these thoughts, they're choosing you, spiking when you're tired, bored, lonely. They interrupt sleep, they dismantle conversations, and here's the trap. Feeding them makes them louder, checking their feed, replaying words, mining texts for hidden signals. Each refresh carves the neural groove deeper. Intense, repetitive thinking about someone isn't evidence of destiny or depth. It's your brain stuck in a reward prediction loop, treating one person like both the threat and the solution. At level 87 of attraction, you've probably felt how fast magnetic can turn manic. Breaking free means starving these thoughts with intention, deliberately boring your brain back to baseline. Stop the refresh. Let the silence return. That boredom is the reset you need. Frustration, attraction, spike. You've seen it happen. Someone stops being polished and suddenly becomes magnetic. Maybe they roll their eyes at something, their voice gets rough, or they admit they're lost on something, and something in you wakes up. The attraction spike doesn't land because they became more perfect. It lands because they became less performed. When someone drops the mask, even for a breath, you see the actual person underneath, and that authenticity hits harder than any rehearsed charm ever could. Watch what happens when you do this in reverse. You become more attractive to others the moment you stop grinding for their approval, when you let your frustration show, when you say what's actually bothering you instead of staying smooth. The paradox is sharp. Stop optimizing for approval and you become more approachable. Vulnerability reads as confidence. Frustration reads as honesty. What looked like a flaw in your performance is actually the thing that makes you human-sized instead of distant. But here's the trap most people walk into, thinking they should weaponize it, perform frustration, fake exasperation, manufacture authenticity like it's a product line. That's just a fresher mask bolted onto the old one. Real frustration spikes attraction because it signals you're not completely drained from the performance itself, that you have enough internal steadiness to let the cracks show without falling apart. That's the actual draw, not the cracks, but the ground underneath them. The person who can be real without needing reassurance afterward, that's who gets pulled toward. Rejection as opioid withdrawal. Your phone screen goes dark. The texts that used to arrive every hour, every half hour, just stop. The plans you'd circled on the calendar get canceled without explanation. That person who flooded your nervous system with dopamine and opioids every time they validated you, replied to you, chose you, they're gone. Your brain doesn't label this a breakup. It labels it a drug supply cutoff, and neurologically, that's not poetic shorthand. During romantic attachment, your reward system gets wired to their presence like a circuit board firing chemicals every time they show up. Then, absence hits and your entire body is screaming for a substance it can't make on its own anymore. You're experiencing withdrawal, not heartbreak. That's why rejection stings so differently than other losses. A friendship can fade quietly, a job can end cleanly, but rejection from someone you were bonded to creates actual physical pain. Your brain is literally in chemical deprivation. And here's where it gets dangerous. Just like someone craving opioids will do almost anything for one more hit, you find yourself reaching out at 2 a.m, crafting apologies, checking their Instagram compulsively, anything to restore that rush. The craving isn't about them anymore. It's pure chemistry and free fall. That aching pull isn't weakness and it isn't love. It's your dopamine system begging to get back to baseline. Give it time. The withdrawal passes. Your reward circuitry will eventually find new anchors, new sources. But fighting that 2 a.m. urge feels like fighting addiction, because that's exactly what you're doing. Your rumination and grief loops. You know that feeling when someone you're attracted to pulls away and your mind decides to play that moment on repeat for 3 hours straight? Every word, every silence, every way you think you failed. That loop isn't helping you understand what happened. It's just your brain trying to solve an unsolvable puzzle by grinding the same gear over and over. Rumination is grief dressed up in a different costume, and it shows up most brutally in attraction contexts because rejection hits the part of you that believed in something. When someone chooses distance or leaves, your mind gets stuck trying to rewrite the ending, find the thing you missed, prove that if only you'd been different, it would have worked. The trap is this: the more you play the tape, the more real the pain becomes, and the more your nervous system believes it needs to keep watching for danger. You're not actually learning anything new after the first cycle. You're just reinforcing the wound. What happens at level 90 attraction psychology is you recognize the loop itself as a sign. Not that you failed, but that your attachment system is activated and terrified. The antidote isn't to think your way out of it. It's to interrupt it entirely. Move your body, change the room, call someone, splash cold water on your face, do anything that tells your nervous system the threat has passed and rumination isn't required anymore. The grief is real and deserves space. The loop is optional. That's the shift that breaks you free from spinning endlessly in the dark. Oxytocin in-group narrowing. You feel safest with your people, your crew, your tribe, your person. That warmth you get when you recognize someone who gets you, who speaks your language, who laughs at the same things. That is oxytocin doing something sneaky. It bonds you to them, but it also quietly bonds you against everyone else. The chemical that makes you generous and trusting and open with your inner circle, it simultaneously makes outsiders feel more foreign, more suspicious, more other. Your brain floods with oxytocin around your partner, and suddenly strangers feel more threatening. You are with your people, and other people's values feel wrong. It is not a flaw in the system. It is the entire point. Evolution gifted us the ability to form unshakable loyalty to small groups because small groups survived better together. But modern life is not small groups anymore. You meet hundreds of people. You live alongside thousands. You consume media from millions. And if oxytocin narrows your circle, you start sorting the world into us and them without meaning to. The tricky part is that oxytocin feels like love, like connection, like truth. So the boundaries it creates feel real rather than chemical. Someone outside your in-group just seems less trustworthy. Their motives seem darker. Their lifestyle seems wrong. What feels like clear-eyed judgment is actually a narrow door that oxytocin built. The move is not to kill the bond. Keep it. But notice when you are in the oxytocin loop, when you are feeling especially bonded, and gently check whether you are seeing someone clearly or seeing them through a chemical filter. Vasopressin pair bonding. You know that feeling when you've been with someone long enough that their presence alone calms your nervous system? Not passion anymore, something quieter and deeper. That's vasopressin at work, the neurochemical that builds walls around the two of you and makes everyone else feel slightly distant. While dopamine is the rush of new attraction, vasopressin is the glue that makes you choose the same person over and over, even when the butterflies are gone. It floods your brain during touch, conversation, vulnerability, especially in long-term couples who've weathered real storms together. Here's what trips most people up. Vasopressin doesn't make relationships feel exciting. It makes them feel necessary. Your partner becomes part of your baseline, your nervous system's home frequency. You miss them not because they're thrilling anymore, but because their absence creates an actual biological ache. The tricky part is that vasopressin also makes you less attuned to alternatives. You stop noticing other people in the same way. This is a feature, not a bug. It's designed to keep you anchored, but it can also blind you if the relationship is actually hollow beneath the neurochemistry. Real pair bonding through vasopressin works best when there's genuine compatibility underneath. It strengthens what's already there, but it won't save something built on nothing. The test is simple. If you're in a long relationship wondering whether you're still in love, check whether the quiet presence of that person still settles you, still makes your chest feel less tight. That calm is vasopressin talking, and it's often more honest than passion ever was. Testosterone drop after bonding. You've just spent a perfect weekend with someone, the kind where time moves differently. You're laughing, touching, sleeping deeply next to them. Come Monday morning, you feel softer somehow, less driven, less aggressive, less hungry for the world. That's not laziness or emotional collapse. That's biology doing exactly what it evolved to do. Research on both men and women shows that oxytocin spikes during bonding trigger a measurable drop in testosterone, the hormone tied to dominance-seeking, risk-taking, and that restless itch to prove yourself. It's a chemical shift toward caregiving and security. The trap is mistaking this for loss of interest. You feel calmer around them, so you assume the spark is fading. But what's actually happening is your nervous system is recalibrating from seeking mode into belonging mode. The attraction hasn't weakened, it's transformed. High testosterone wants novelty and conquest. Low testosterone wants presence and protection. Neither is better, but if you don't understand the switch, you'll sabotage it. You'll start testing them, picking fights, manufacturing distance, anything to feel that old testosterone hum again. Or worse, you'll leave thinking the relationship killed your edge. The real move is recognizing this dip as a sign that bonding is working, not failing. The person who stays calm through this phase, who doesn't panic or flee or demand constant adrenaline, is the one who gets to experience what comes next. A kind of attraction that doesn't need proving anymore because it's rooted in something deeper than hormones alone. That steady pull toward them becomes your new baseline, and it's harder to shake than the rush ever was. Cortisol coupling in couples. Your partner walks in frazzled from a terrible meeting, and within minutes, your shoulders are tense too. Not because you heard the gory details, but because their nervous system is broadcasting stress straight into yours. That's cortisol coupling, the neurobiological glue that makes couples either soothe each other or spiral together without a word exchanged. When their stress hormones spike, your mirror neurons fire, your amygdala picks up the threat, and your own hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis starts echoing theirs like one alarm triggering another. You're not being codependent, you're being wired this way. But here's what flips the game. The same circuitry that makes you catch their panic also gives you the power to interrupt it. If one person stays even slightly regulated while the other is flooded, something biological shifts. Your calm nervous system becomes a tuning fork for theirs, not by talking them down or pretending everything's fine, but by simply holding steadiness in your own body while staying emotionally close to them. Some couples fight for hours and both leave wrecked because neither person broke the feedback loop. Others hit conflict, and one person's rootedness keeps the whole thing from detonating. At the deepest attraction level, the move isn't managing their stress or absorbing it as your own burden. It's staying tethered to your own ground while remaining genuinely present with theirs. That's the frequency couples crave. Someone who doesn't flee when things get hard, but doesn't drown with you either. Safety wrapped in steadiness. It's what keeps people together through the actual storms, what makes you magnetic to someone in crisis, and what separates lasting bonds from relationships that burn hot and collapse. Positive illusions maintenance. You've been together long enough to see your person's flaws in high definition, the way they sidestep difficult conversations, how they overcommit and underdeliver, the small unkindnesses that slip out when they're tired. And here's what actually separates couples who stay madly attached from those who drift apart. The ones still holding on are not ignoring those flaws at all. They're actively choosing a different story about them. She's not avoidant. She's cautious because she's been hurt before. He's not lazy. He's protecting his energy for what matters most. It sounds like self-deception, and technically it is, but it's the kind that works. Psychologists call it positive illusion, and long-term couples who maintain it report higher satisfaction, more sexual desire, and deeper commitment. The trick is not believing your person is perfect. It's remembering why their particular shape, flaws included, fits into the architecture of your life. When attraction fades, it's often because the illusion cracks and you start narrating their behavior with pure charity withheld. You stop asking why they're late and just decide they don't respect your time. You stop wondering if they're overwhelmed and just think they don't care. The maintenance work is this: regularly choose the generous interpretation before the uncharitable one lands. Ask the question before you write the story. This isn't about being naive or settling. It's about directing your attention toward the version of them that makes you want to stay. Attraction is not something that happens to you passively. It's a narrative you actively tend day after day, choice after choice, until the story becomes so familiar it feels like seeing. Derogation of alternatives. Watch what happens the moment you choose someone. Their ex wasn't that special anyway. Their job suddenly seems less impressive, and those other people you could have dated, suddenly they all look shallow or broken in ways you didn't notice before. You're not being cruel, you're being neurological. Your brain does this quiet thing where it downgrades every path you didn't take, every alternative you left behind. It's not exactly lying. It's more like strategic forgetting. You focus obsessively on the flaws in what you rejected and polish up the strengths in what you chose until the narrative feels airtight. Of course, this person was the obvious pick. In attraction, this mechanism runs especially deep because it makes the person you've invested in almost impossible to leave. Not because they're actually extraordinary, but because you've unconsciously rewritten the story so that leaving would mean admitting you made a massive mistake. You've talked yourself into believing they're your best option, and that belief feels like evidence, not like protection. Watch a long-term couple that's stuck and miserable. Often they're not trapped by love. They're trapped by this. They've spent years amplifying everything good about their choice and erasing everything good about the life they didn't live until staying feels safer than the unknown. The sneaky part is that the mechanism works perfectly, which means it feels like clarity. Before you lock someone in as obviously the right choice, try a small thing. Ask yourself what you've stopped seeing about the alternatives and what you've started ignoring about the person in front of you. That question alone keeps you honest. Devaluation as commitment device. Watch what happens the moment you've decided someone actually matters. You start hunting for flaws, and those imperfections feel oddly like relief. A person you're casually swiping on, your brain highlights every strength. A person you've decided to build with, suddenly their quirks become proof this is real, not some fever dream. Your mind isn't breaking them down, it's anchoring itself. The deeper you go, the more your brain protects that investment by finding legitimate reasons to dislike them. It sounds like sabotage, but it's actually the opposite. If you can hold both their beauty and their messiness in the same frame without bolting, you've made a commitment that feels chosen rather than accidental. The devaluation softens the terror of having picked wrong. It transforms staying for momentum into an active decision. You see them clearly, you stay anyway, and that makes the bond feel earned rather than lucky. Think of someone you deeply trust. You know exactly what irritates them, and knowing it doesn't diminish your care. It actually tightens it. The danger lives in the details, though. When devaluation becomes one-sided, when it turns cruel, when you use it to rationalize staying in something that's harming you. But at its core, spotting the real cracks in someone you actually want and choosing them anyway. That's the bridge from infatuation to love. That's how you move from I'm attracted because they're flawless to I'm committed because I know exactly what I'm choosing. The flaws aren't design failures. They're proof you're both real. And that proof, that clear-eyed knowing, is what holds people together when the initial electricity fades. Investment model of commitment. Think about why you stick with a bad job for years before finally quitting. You've already invested time, learned the systems, built relationships, turned down other offers. Walking away means all that effort dissolves into nothing. So you stay, convincing yourself it's not that bad. That sunk cost logic is precisely how the investment model works in attraction and relationships. Operating so quietly, you'll miss it until someone names it out loud. Commitment isn't built on happiness alone. It's built on what you've already poured in: money spent, memories made, promises kept, vulnerabilities shared, plans you built together. The more you invest, the higher the cost of leaving becomes. Not because the relationship got better, but because the exit price climbed. You see it everywhere. Couples staying through mediocrity because they've already bought the house. People tolerating bad partners because ending it feels like admitting those years were wasted. Your brain genuinely experiences loss differently when you've already paid the price of admission, and that neurological fact is what makes investment so sticky. Here's the real trap, though. You can easily mistake investment for love. The intensity of commitment can feel identical to genuine care, and your mind will convince you they're the same thing. But the moment you catch yourself staying because leaving costs too much rather than staying because you're excited about what's ahead, that distinction matters enormously. The stickiest, most durable attraction isn't the one built on what you've already given. It's the one built on what you're genuinely excited to keep discovering. Notice which foundation you're actually building on, because that choice reshapes everything. Michelangelo phenomenon sculpting. There is a marble block in front of you, blank, solid. Everyone else sees only stone, but you see something finished inside it, someone already complete, and your only job is to chip away what doesn't belong. That's the Michelangelo phenomenon, and it lives at the heart of attraction gone sideways. You fall for potential because your brain is wired to complete patterns, to see the finished sculpture where others see rough material. When you meet someone with raw edges and untapped depth, something ignites. I can help shape this. I can unlock who they're meant to be, and suddenly you feel necessary, special, like you alone see their true worth. The seduction is in that feeling of being the savior. You invest in their becoming, overlook what they actually are right now because you're so vivid about what they could be, and that gap between real and imagined becomes the fuel for the relationship. But you cannot sculpt another person. You can only sculpt stone. Real people have agency, resistance, their own vision of who they want to become, and it might not match yours. The person who stays in that relationship, constantly chiseling and adjusting, waiting for the marble to finally match the image in their head, slowly becomes someone who is never satisfied, never at rest, always disappointed that the raw material won't cooperate. Attraction to potential is not love. It's a fantasy with another person's face on it. Genuine connection happens when you see who someone actually is right now and choose them anyway. Habituation to hedonic baseline. You remember the first time your person did something small for you? Maybe they brought your favorite coffee, or they caught your eye across a room and smiled. Your chest lit up, chemicals flooded. It felt like proof. Fast forward 3 years and they do the exact same thing and you barely register it. not because they changed, not because you fell out of love. Your nervous system just stopped throwing a parade. This is the cruel joke of the hedonic treadmill. We are wired to adapt, to baseline, to return to neutral no matter what we receive. The new relationship excitement doesn't die because attraction dies. It dies because your brain got efficient. And here is where most people make the mistake. They interpret that flatness as a sign the relationship is broken, so they chase the high again with someone new. But that someone new will also become ordinary. That feeling of this is it will also fade into Wednesday morning. The real maturity in long-term attraction isn't fighting habituation. It is learning to see beneath the chemical feedback, learning to notice what you actually do for each other when nobody is watching, when the reward system is offline. It is the choice to stay curious about someone when they stop surprising you by accident. The deepest attraction is built not on the rush of newness, but on the deliberate decision to keep looking, to keep discovering, to treat the familiar as genuinely worth investigation. It lives in noticing the small things that once made you flutter, now seen clearly for what they actually cost someone to give. That is the level 100 game, when presence and attention become the aphrodisiac.